Hey, welcome friends. What if Naruto was encounter with Orochimaru and Kabuto youngest Avenger movie? A small blue light shined in the penthouse of the in-progress reconstruction of Stark Tower. The light came from the center of a man's chest, his sleeping form being sprawled on a small futon in the center of the room. The man had a neatly trimmed goatee and a thin dark mustache on his face. His dark hair was sticking out randomly from his tossing an effort to find comfort. This was the famous billionaire playboy Anthony Edward Stark, preferring to be called Tony by those close to him. To the world he was also known as the armored hero, Iron Man. A robotic voice spoke in the tower. "Mr. Stark, Dr. Banner is asking for your presence in Lab 8, he says it's urgent." Tony groaned and rolled to his other side, throwing his arm over his shoulder and waving it tiredly. Tell Bruce sleeping Jarvis." Sorry sir, but drive, Banner is rather insisting that you join him, JARVIS, which is an acronym for just a rather very intelligent system, said, almost pleadingly. Bro's spine, the inventor yawned out as he rolled with a grunt. What could be so important? He says that it has to do with the other guy, the artificial intelligence stated in finality, which made Tony's dark eyes snap open. The man sat up and looked out the window. Come again? Tony asked with furrowed brows. The new voice cut in over the PA system with a chuckle. Sorry Tony, I really need to talk to you, though, in a way, it does concern the other guy. I shouldn't have let you have access to Jarvis' PA system. Fine, it'll be down in a snap, Tony grumbled as he stood and rubbed his eyes with his finger and thumb. Another chuckle came from across the PA, and Tony shook his head before walking to the closet and pulling an Iron Maiden shirt on, scratching the back of his head. Tony went to his personal elevator and went down to the lab his temperamental friend. What could he want? Don't tell me Hess trying to create a form of control over Hulk. I thought I convinced him that he was better off, the billionaire thought to himself before shrugging and pulling his cell phone out. The flimsy, high-tech device flickered on with a simple touch and turned it onto its side, the screen following like a certain business phone. Before sliding his thumb across the screen, he stopped and selected the image of a red-heated woman with blue eyes. Underneath the image was her name. Pepper. The phone rang for a moment, Tony rocking on his feet due to his impatience, before a tired woman picked up. NGH, hello. Hey Pepper, Tony greeted with a purposely over-chipper tone in his voice. He stifled a snicker when he received a growl from the woman. Virginia Potts, whom he and her friends affectionately called Pepper, was not a morning person, now being the CEO of Stark Enterprises. His former assistant-turned-girlfriend had more responsibilities than just making sure he kept himself clean, because as the original CEO and face of the company, he still had to keep out of negative press. Tony, it's 4:30 in the morning, I have a meeting with Rhodey's bosses in 6 hours, why, in the name of God, would you call me at 4:30? Pepper asked with a noticeable growl in her voice. A small part of Tony felt bad at disrupting his girlfriend's sleep, but he brushed it aside. Where's the fun if he feels bad? Oh, sorry I forgot, Tony lied before he continued. Bruce had Jarvis wake me up over something, and I did want to wish you luck in the conference. Pepper sighed. Yeah, fine, tell Bruce I said hi. Oh, and did you send those flowers to Phil's jealous girlfriend? At the mention of the dead SHIELD agent, Tony's mood fell. Yeah, she sent us an invitation to his funeral. Did Director Fury release his body? So he says, Tony muttered as he shook his head. I think he'll. The hour not doing anything to his body before, during, or after Phil's funeral, Tony. The inventor chuckled. You know me too well, I might have to hire one of Fury's spy friends to kill you. Pepper tiredly giggled. I'll call Natty for help then. Tony frowned. How'd you two get so pals? Why walls why behind my back? Similar interests, Mr. Avenger, the woman tittered out with an unseen but heard smile. Listen Tony, I really have to get back to sleep. No, yeah, I understand, Tony said as his elevator started to slow. I'm almost at Bruce's lab anyway, I'll call you later. Goodbye Tony, love you. Tony internally winced, expressing emotion was hard for him, and even though he did love Pepper, saying it was another story, he mumbled into the speaker, unintelligible, you, to Pepper. The conversation ended with a click and the dark-haired inventor frowned as he pocketed his phone. The man shook his head before looking up at the opening elevator doors, putting a smile on his face. He walked over to the brown-haired man wearing a flannel shirt and dark brown cargos. The man was looking down with a frown at his phone. What's wrong Bruce? Your, friend keeping you up? Tony asked as he approached the mild-mannered man. Dr. Bruce Banner, a scientific genius in his own right, looked up and gave a nervous smile. Well, nervous was how the man always acted, considering he was pumped full of gamma radiation and turned into a rage-fueled monster that some referred to as the Hulk. Personally, Tony thought the Hulk was incredible. Sorry about this Tony, Bruce apologized before pocketing his phone and offering the man his hand. A friend of mine just called, he and his, associate helped me when I was trying to get rid of the other guy, you may know him, Dr. Stephen Strange. A neurologist. Tony asked with an arched brow. I thought he lost his license. Actually, he was forced to quit after an accident, Bruce said as he rubbed the back of his neck. Please don't bring it up, now Hessen, well Hess a highly influential advisor. What, is he a shrink? Tony asked with a smirk, that's gotta be fun. Hess, you have to see it to believe it, Bruce replied with a strained smile. Tony rolled his eyes. Yeah, sure, but if he has a suit of combat armor I'm suing, the billionaire joked. Bruce chuckled. I highly doubt it'll come to that, ever, the scientist replied. Anyway, Hess asked for my help. My help? Bruce gave another strained smile. Actually he asked for the other guy and I, but it'd be more comfortable if you came with me. Tony gave his colleague and friend a grin as he threw an arm over Bruce's shoulders, leading him into the billionaire's personal elevator. I've always wanted to meet the brilliant drive, strange, that, and you've piqued my curiosity with your chosen words. Tony had Jarvis send the MK7's wristbands down to the garage and put them on when he and Bruce got down there. Just in case, the inventor told the curious scientist. Bruce told him to drive to New York's Greenwich Village, 117A Bleecker Street to be specific. Tony nodded and led the scientist to his 2012 Acura NSX. A short drive later, they were walking up the steps to a wooden door of an old building. Banner knocked on the door and a young man of Asian descent immediately opened it. On the second knock with a shaved head answered. He wore a blue robe and gave a small smile to the two men. Ah, Doctor, Banner, you've made it. Oh, I'm sorry Mr. Stark, the man said apologetically. I wasn't expecting you, nor was Master Strange. Come, Master Strange is struggling, and I must swap out with him, so he may explain the situation. Thank you, Wong, Bruce said with a grateful smile, Tony giving a small nod before they followed the man in. Tony leaned over to Bruce. Since when is Strange running a dojo? He whispered with confusion. Before Bruce could respond, Wong released a chuckle and looked over his shoulder at the two geniuses. Master Strange is not a sensei in martial arts, but he is a master, Wong cryptically answered the sarcastic question. Tony looked at Bruce, who merely nodded in agreement before he shrugged. Whatever, led the way, Wong Kong, Tony said to the apparent servant. Bruce shook his head at his friend's antics, and if Wong took offense to Stark's words, he didn't show it. Walking down the stairs to a cellar, the two Avengers became more and more unnerved before Bruce stopped on the stairs, making Tony and Wong look at him. The scientist was literally shaking in place and was wringing his hands, his eyes glancing everywhere at once. He felt like he was running from General Ross again. Like a squad of Hulkbusters, as they called themselves, were about to pop out at any moment. Hey, Tony said, poking him in the side. Banner jumped up a step and Tony gave a concerned frown. Banner, you okay? Bruce sighed and ran a hand through his hair. No, I'm not okay, something's got my nerves working overtime. Tony looked down at an equally concerned Wong, who glanced away and murmured to himself in a foreign tongue. The servant looked up and asked, does it bother the beast? No, well, kind of, Bruce admitted, pinching the bridge of his nose. It's making my head hurt, a sign that the Hulk feels threatened. Tony supplied with his brows up before they narrowed, and he pulled his phone out. Jarvis, I need the MK7 ready to deploy. Of course, sir, Jarvis replied in his proper tone before a confused one took over. Sir, where are you? The GPS in your car says you're parked on Bleecker Street, but your implanted GPS is being blocked. Tony's eyes went to Wong, who held a hand up. All will be explained. Come, my master needs us. Tony looked at Bruce, who shook his head. I'm fine now, the feeling passed. The three continued down the stairs before they came to a door with a pentagram on it. Wong muttered under his breath, and the silver pentagram glowed a light yellow before it faded, and the door opened. Looking at the odd duo, Wong gave a stern warning, whatever you do, please keep your distance. Tony arched his brow before he entered the room. A feeling of death washed over him, and he quickly looked to his right, his eyes widening at what he saw. A man with dark hair, silver streaks along the sides and a beard much like his own, stood across from a snarling teenager. The man wore a blue tunic over dark slacks, red gloves on his hands and a red cape with gold fringe on his back. The teenage boy had blonde hair, which looked wild and unruly, slit red eyes, and enlonged fangs and nails. The most striking feature was the jagged scars on his cheeks, 3 on either one, giving him a feral appearance. Well, that and the blonde teen was nude. Bruce, are you seeing this? Stark asked with disbelief in his eyes, as the boy struggled against the flickering yellow cage that was projected around him. Bruce removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes before he replied, I'm seeing it, Tony, still working on believing it. Master, switch. Wong called as he ran past them and held his hands in the same manner as the caped man. The man dropped his arms at his sides before collapsing to his knees. Looking up, the man gave a grin before he got to his feet and approached Bruce. The man offered the scientist a hand and got a numb handshake from him before he spoke to the billionaire. Ah, Mr. Stark, welcome to my home, the Sanctum Sanctorum. I am Dr. Strange, Sorcerer Supreme. You've met my assistant Wong. Tony numbly nodded before looking at the assistant. What are you doing to that boy? Strange looked over at the blonde and a frown came over him. I'm subduing his demon. It'll be brief, because Wong isn't as strong as myself. The boy appeared only 45 minutes ago, unconscious and nude. When I woke him, he began speaking in Japanese, leaping at me and interrogating me. He demanded I tell him where I hid someone, but when I continued to ask who, he started to lose control. I can tell he recently lost someone, but his rage made him lose himself to the demon that resided within. What is he? Tony asked with a frown. Alien? Asgardian? Neither, all I know is he is possessed by a demon, Strange said, looking to Bruce before he continued, who draws power from intense emotions. Banner gave a frown before he spoke. I try to avoid stressful environments. I saw that news report a month ago that says otherwise, the sorcerer replied with a pointed look. Banner, you need to change and knock him out, killing or trying to is ill-advised. In the middle of Greenwich Village. You saw what happened to Harlem and New York City, right? Tony intervened on his friend's behalf. Doctor, Strange gave the inventor an amused look. Yes, in fact I did see, but Bruce knows he can let himself out in the Santorum, the sorcerer replied. Tony looked to a sheepish scientist who wrung his hands again. Bruce looked from Tony to Strange before he sighed. They are sure he needs to be knocked out. Can't you use sedatives? Bruce asked almost pleadingly, only to receive a negative shake of his head. The top scientist concerning gamma radiation sighed again before pulling his glasses out and giving them to Tony. The two men stepped back as he walked towards the caged blonde. But unknown to the two Avengers, Strange had cast a spell under his breath to make the room longer than it looked. He knew that Drive, Banner's other half, preferred a running start. I can't believe him going to do this, Banner thought before he focused on his anger and began to change. His body grew until he was nearly 9 feet tall, ripped and green. The green skinned being gave a snarl before he growled and ran towards the caged blonde. Wong heard the stomps and released the containment spell, leaping back as the blonde was tackled by Hulk. You know, Hess gonna need a new pair of pants after this, Tony said as he watched Hulk stand and pick the struggling blonde up. Strange gave an amused snort. I'm aware. Hulk growled at the blonde in his grip. His other half, Banner, was telling him the blonde was the target. The gamma beast snorted and slammed the teen into the concrete, being careful to keep from completely destroying the floor and killing the human. Banner was adamant about not killing humans, but Hulk didn't care most of the time. Humph, Hulk snorted again, looking over at the three men watching him from a distance. Recognizing them, Hulk smirked and prepared himself to run towards them. They were all strong, and Hulk wanted to fight. He didn't notice the glowing red fist until it was too late. Die. Snarled the blonde as Hulk was sent through the wall. Tony's mouth popped open and he looked at Strange, who was already chanting under his breath. What the hell just happened? The billionaire asked as he looked back at the snarling and glowing blonde. His nude form was now surrounded by red energy. 2 long rabbit-like ears sprouted from the top, and a thick single tail-like appendage appeared at the base of his spine. Wong's answer was drowned out by Hulk's infuriated roar. Tony looked back to see the large being tackle the blonde again, grabbing his arm and throwing him over his shoulder through the hole he had made. Hulk gave another growl and braced himself as he saw the blonde flip in the air, land on his feet, and fly right back at him. Hulk roared again as he cocked his right fist back. Hulk smash Red Boy. Red Boy weaker than Hulk. The gamma being thought as he threw his right hand out, catching the blonde in his jaw. The blonde soared back once again, but his tail grew and wrapped around Hulk's neck. Immediately, Hulk grabbed at the appendage, his arm straining to remove it from him as the blonde continued to fly. The teen landed on the wall of the other room. His body curled up like an animal waiting to pounce. Before he did just that, the blonde drove his shoulder into Hulk's gut, making Hulk release the blonde's tail. Hulk landed on his back with a groan, but his hand tightened when he felt the teen attempting to leap off him, swinging his arm away from his allies. Hulk sat up with a grunt before baring his teeth at the equally snarling teen. Just die, damn you. I have to kill him. He has to die. The boy said in a strange language. Hulk growled and ran towards him with his left fist ready to strike him. Puny Red Boy, be quiet. Hulk roared as he threw a left hook. The blonde took the blow in his jaw before he skid back and slammed into the wall. Dazed, he shook his head, but before he could ready himself, Hulk was on the boy with a large fist to the gut. The blonde bent over and the red energy surrounding him faded. The boy's red eyes became half-lidded and he fell to his knees when Hulk removed his fist. Puny human, Hulk scoffed as he clasped his hands together and drove them onto the boy's skull, rather than being split open, which mildly shocked the Hulk and completely awed the others watching. The boy simply fell face first to the ground, out like a light. Hulk snorted and picked the teen up, carrying him over his shoulder to the three watching. He dropped the boy before eyeing Tony, grunting as he began to change back into the puny Banner. Bruce stumbled and instantly grabbed his oversized pants, keeping himself decent in front of the three other men, before looking down at the blonde. I got him. Yeah, I think you did, Tony said as he watched Wong cover the boy with a blanket before he picked him up. Doctor Strange looked at the two in motion for them to follow while he in turn followed Wong. Wong went up the stairs and stopped outside a door, which he opened with a simple nudge with his foot. The assistant to the Sorcerer Supreme laid his package on the bale of hay in the center of the floor before he bowed to Strange. "The boy is unconscious, Master," Wong said. "It is safe to begin the soul walk." Soul walk? What the hell is a soul walk? Tony asked Drive. Strange. The sorcerer ignored the dark-haired inventor and nodded to Wong. The assistant bowed and vacated the room. Strange went to the blonde teen's side and placed a hand on his head. Tony and Bruce watched before the former stepped forward. "Hey, Strange, what the hell is a soul walk?" "Tony, maybe you should leave him alone," Bruce suggested. Tony waved his fellow Avenger off and took another step towards the former neurosurgeon. "Strange. I'm talking to you, what is a soul walk?" the billionaire asked, a little miffed at being brushed off. The Sorcerer Supreme removed his hand and glared at the inventor for interfering with his work, standing to face the man. Doctor Strange crossed his arms over his chest. "Mr. Stark, if you must know what a soul walk is, I will gladly explain it to you," he said, receiving an expectant look from the inventor and a curious one from the scientist. Strange narrowed his eyes. "However, I cannot explain it until I finish checking the boy. His body is still recovering from his arrival, and the demonic beast within him had taken advantage." Demonic beast. That was a common psychological meltdown or a drug trip gone bad for a mutant. Hess better off at that institute down in New Jersey. Stark countered with a scowl. "Tony," Bruce tried to interject but was drowned out by the inventor's hypothesizing rant. Furthermore, the energy he released was similar, if not radioactive. "We could be at risk if we don't quarantine him." "And what about child services, did you contact them yet?" "He could be a runaway or experiment from a laboratory, no offense Bruce." "None taken, but Tony, do you know a guy named Fury?" "Shield, Commander. Tall black guy, one eye, kind of hard to forget actually. Does he know about you?" "Because I'm certain none of his files had anything to say about you." "Mr. Stark, please calm down, Doctor," Strange suggested with hardened eyes, getting a small glare from the man. "As to your question, yes, I do in fact know Director Fury. Do I operate under him? No. Do I advise him? At times, like when the Asgardians came to Earth, or when he wanted to know more about the Chitauri or the Cosmic Cube." "The what?" "Oh yes, it's referred to as the Tesseract, isn't it?" Strange mused before shrugging. "Anyway, the boy is not of this Earth." "Hess an alien?" Bruce inquired. Strange gave the scientist an uneasy smile. "In a way, I suppose you could say that," the man said before he looked back at the unconscious boy, "but Hess more of an interdimensional being like Thor or Loki." "Yeah, we've met the guy," Tony answered with a scowl as he crossed his arms. "Freaking showboat. Look who's calling the kettle black, Mr. Pot," Bruce thought with an amused smile as he glanced at his friend. Tony sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose and squeezed his eyes shut. "I need a drink," he muttered under his breath, but the two other men heard it nonetheless. "Doctor," Strange gestured to the door. "Wong is preparing beverages in the main study, down the hall to the right, third door from the end on your left. You shall find a bar and several items of interest." Bruce and Tony gave thankful nods, while Strange went back to the blonde lying on the bale of hay, but as they left the room, Strange called out, "Oh, and Mr. Stark. Please restrain yourself from touching anything." Bruce chuckled at the playful pout that crossed the billionaire's face. Strange looked down at the boy and sat down to his side, crossing his legs and taking a meditative position, his eyes calmly shut and the amulet around his neck shined a bright blue. Strange put his hand on the blonde's forehead and concentrated, feeling his spiritual body leaving the physical one. Strange's eyes snapped open and he found himself in a sewer. Around his feet, water leaked slightly, and the sorcerer quickly levitated to avoid being in contact with it. A frown marred the man's face as he lightly grasped his chin and thought, "Curious, the boy holds a lot of sorrow within himself, and a sewer as a landscape, interesting." Strange floated down the sewer, rising slightly as the water did, before he came into a large room. A large cage sat in front of the sorcerer, and he took note immediately of the paper seal that was in front of it. Intrigued, the man moved forward and examined the writing on it. Paper seal, kanji written on it, must be a native of the parallel dimension of our future's past eastern region, the land just above Makai, the eastern demonic realm. Even stranger is the translation. Here lies Kurama the Kyuubi no Kitsune, until the death god claims its soul. Well, that answers a few questions. But I must admit that I don't know enough about the dimension the boy comes from. Strange's thoughts were disrupted by a teen's shout, "Hey! Get the hell away from that. Who are you and what are you doing in my mind, Tebeo?" He turned and saw the same boy, only this time dressed in an orange and black jacket, a black bandana with a metal plate on the front, and orange pants. Strange thought about the boy's language, not surprised it was similar to one from his dimension. Crude Japanese, possibly an ancient mix of Chinese thrown in there, hope him not too rusty or Wong may have to do this, the sorcerer mused before he bowed and greeted the blonde. Hello, boy, my name is Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, sorry to intrude, but only minutes ago your physical body became enshrouded by demonic aura and you attacked me. At this, the blonde's face drained of color and worry. Oh man, are you okay? Did I hurt anyone? No, we managed to knock you unconscious before anything could happen, if I may ask, who are you and where are you from? Strange asked with an arched brow of curiosity. The blonde gave a grin and the water lowered slightly. Strange noticed that the boy's ankles were still in the water. My name's Naruto Uzumaki, future fire shadow, Dadabeo. I'm a genin of the village hidden in the leaves. The now named Naruto exclaimed with a wide smile. Strange chuckled and nodded. Hanhagakure no Sato, huh? A strange name, but what's even more curious is that he claims he is a genin, a ninja. Time to investigate, thought the Sorcerer Supreme. Before Strange could speak, a malicious feeling overcame him and he quickly spun around, coming face to face with a giant red eye. Boy. Who is this intruder you've let in? What is his purpose and why does he speak like he is a scholar? A deep voice asked, getting a scoff from the blonde teen. Screw you, Fox. You almost made me kill this guy. Naruto cried as he pointed at the Sorcerer Supreme. Naruto crossed his arms defiantly and the fox gave a low growl. You forget your place, boy. I am the nine-tailed demon fox. Lord of Hell, bringer of death and destruction, and the living entity of chaos itself. The demon roared. Naruto kicked water at the large fox and pulled the bottom of his eyelid down, sticking his tongue out. Naya. You're the bastard fox that attacked my village. I'll keep you contained for the rest of my life and when I die, you can go straight to hell. The blonde shouted at the fox, who roared in outrage. A large claw shot out and tried to strike the blonde, but it was stopped by a blue shield coming from the hands of the Sorcerer Supreme. You dare interfere, mortal. I shall devour your soul. The Kyuubi roared. Doctor Strange narrowed his eyes and he glared at the entity. I am Drive Strange, Sorcerer Supreme. His declaration made the infuriated Kyuubi's eyes widen. You forget your place, Kurama. You are just one of 9, and if I so wish it, I can banish you to the depths of Mephistopheles' realm. A Sorcerer Supreme? Kurama swallowed as he shrank back into himself. Neither took notice of Naruto's confusion, continuing to stare the other down, one out of fear and awe, but the other out of disapproval and anger. Boy. What's going on here? Naruto cried in confusion, getting their attention. The blonde pointed at the fox. You were totally in your roar. I'm the Kyuubi, bow or die. And then he comes up with a chakra bubble or something and calls himself a sorcerer, which makes you turn into a little baby. And what was that about a Kurama? Woes Kurama? Kurama, you idiot. The fox roared, pressing his head against the cell that kept it bound. Naruto blinked in awe before looking at Drive Strange. Okay, what's a sorcerer then? Naruto asked before he became starry-eyed. Is that some sort of ninja? Can you teach me that awesome bubble thing? Ooh, or maybe shoot lasers from my eyes, Tabeo. The fox behind bars gave a sigh at his container's idiocy, whereas Drive Strange gave a chuckle at the boy's excitement, waving his hands to relax the blonde. Strange smiled before he spoke. Naruto-san, I'm not a ninja. A sorcerer is a person that deals in the arts of mysticism and magic. The Sorcerer Supreme, which is what I am, is the most powerful mystic in the world and is charged with a duty to keep the dimensions separated, or at least in peace with one another. Naruto blinked before tilting his head to the right. What? Kurama snorted, saying Hess not a ninja, you pitiful excuse for a hairless ape. Naruto's head fell before he looked back up. Wait, you said something about a different world. That's right, Strange said with a nod. You're currently in the 199,999th dimension. Naruto and Kurama felt their eyes widen and both had their jaws drop. The blonde, or rather the more eccentric of the two, began flailing his arms wildly. I am in a different dimension. What the hell happened to me? How do I get back? I want to get home. I have to take Sasuke back home. Will you shut up? Kurama roared, his ire having been pushed to the limit already by his container's antics. Naruto stopped and glared at the fox, his mouth opening in order to speak, only for his jaw to snap shut as the fox growled. You open your mouth one more time, and it'll make damn sure your stomach cannot handle that dreadful noodle dish you adore so much. Why you won't? You can't. Naruto exclaimed with wide eyes. Strange shook his head and stood between them. Silence. The two bickering occupants of the blonde soulscape went quiet as the Sorcerer Supreme's voice boomed in the area. Strange looked over to the blonde's tenant. Did you bring your host here or not? Kurama snorted, as if I would transport myself to another monkey-ruled dimension. I figured as much, Doctor, Strange sighed before looking at the blonde. Naruto-san, what happened before you appeared before me? When you arrived, you demanded I tell you where Sasuke was, but when I asked who Sasuke was, you snapped and Kurama's influence took over. Naruto crossed his arms and bowed his head as he thought before he slammed the bottom of his fist into an open palm. I remember. Yamato-sensei, Sakura-chan, Sai and I were confronting Orochimaru team and Kabuto team. I don't remember much, but I do remember that snake-faced bastard giving me a smug smirk. So, the infamous story in his reality is different than ours, I wonder by how much, Strange thought before he nodded. I see, Naruto-san, I will tell you now that I cannot send you back, allow me to explain before you. Flip, opening dimensional portals uses an immense amount of power, I won't be surprised if you were summoned here by an Asgardian or by, I wonder. Naruto tilted his head in silent inquiry, only to receive a shake of the head. Doctor, Strange looked at the blonde and said, Naruto-san, I'm going to research ways for you to return home, in the meantime, however, I will have a friend of mine help you blend in. Naruto nodded sadly before sighing, man, Granny Tsunade is gonna kick my ass if I don't get home. Strange cocked a brow in amusement before looking to the demon. The kitsune snorted and laid back down before it spoke. It matters not when I return, so long as the boy does not die in the process. Dying because of his stupidity is one thing, dying from his weakness is an insult to my honor. Oh, Doctor, Strange remained silent for a moment before an idea came to him. The fox was dangerous, despite being sealed away in a human, but the influence he has on the blonde's emotions could cause the boy problems. Deciding to act on his musing, he looked at the blonde. Naruto-san, do you like having Kurama inside you? Naruto gave the man a deadpan look, Hess a freaking demon. Strange shrugged, yeah, I'd be surprised how many people would like that sort of power. Now Kurama, what would you say if I said I could free you? What? What is your gain in this, sorcerer? The demon asked the former neurosurgeon with narrowed eyes, you won't offer this unless it benefited you in some way. True, but I need to ensure that Naruto-san stays out of trouble on his own without your influence affecting him, Doctor, Strange pointed out, getting a reluctant agreeing nod from the kitsune. Thus, if I remove your soul from his, I can ensure you stay out of trouble. The cost would be the power that is sealed within the boy, and you would be rendered a normal fox. Kurama hummed before nodding his head, this, I can accept, unlike you meat sacks, I will not age and regain my power, the boy needs power, this much is certain, if he is to do what his teacher believes of him, the fool believes I care only for destruction, but my reasons for doing said destruction are my own. TCH, if you ask me it's because you are just another asshole, Naruto snorted as he crossed his arms, the fox growled at his container before snapping his gaze to the Sorcerer Supreme. The sooner I am free from his obnoxious behavior the better, growled the demon before he shut his eyes and fell silent. Doctor, Strange nodded and looked at the blonde, who was glaring at the fox behind the bars. I don't trust him, the blonde muttered. Strange nodded understandingly, but this wasn't the boy's call. As Sorcerer Supreme, he had to ensure that the balance between the dimensions wouldn't falter. With a demon-controlled human, no one could be sure how his dimension would be affected. Then trust me, Strange said to the boy, who looked at him. Doctor, Strange gave a soft smile, I promise you, Naruto-san, he will not be a threat if I remove his soul from your own. Naruto clenched his jaw before nodding once, fine. Doctor, Strange nodded back before he faded from the boy's soul, leaving an awed teen and a disgruntled demon behind. Strange's blue eyes opened and he stood, looking down at the boy he knew as Naruto before walking to the main study, where he found Tony Stark enjoying brandy and Bruce Banner flipping through a book. Wong looked up from his place meditating and got to his feet. Master Strange. Wong inquired, what may I do? I need the cadaver of a fox, any species will do, and in relatively good condition, the Sorcerer Supreme instructed, and prepare the soul transference gem, the boy needs immediate treatment. Wong bowed and left to do as instructed. Tony snorted, treatment, what, you're curing his insanity? Strange glared at the man, the boy is in perfect mental health, but I've heard of your more rambunctious activities before the Chitauri invasion. In my own defense, I thought I was dying, the billionaire pointed out. Strange shook his head while Bruce chuckled. The scientist looked to the sorcerer after he placed the book he was reading away. So? The gamma specialist inquired. Doctor, Strange rubbed his temples with his left hand and heaved a sigh. I've made a deal with the devil within the boy, he said, ignoring Tony's snort of disagreement. The boy is strong-willed and comes from a dimension similar to what some philosophers refer to as futures past, in which the inhabitants are more evolved than us, but lack our technology, save for some early machines, like microwaves for example. Excuse me? Tony interjected with a raised hand, you're honestly telling us that this kid is from an alternate dimension? Tony, you've met Thor in person, Bruce deadpanned, the billionaire waved a hand. Yeah, but this kid could just be another one of those, whatchamacallits, mutants. Why do you think Hess from a different reality? Tony asked. Strange shook his head. An alternate dimension, Mr. Stark, not reality. The difference between the two is similar people within two dimensions could not exist, whereas one person depicted in two realities can exist, be different sexes. Realities also tend to follow the same timeline to a certain point. Strange was interrupted by the billionaire once again. Until some drastic event does or does not occur. Yeah, I know, Tony said, but why is this kid from a different reality? Strange glared at the man. I was getting to that. Young Naruto Uzumaki, which is the boy's name, is a member of a militarized village of ninja. Tony and Bruce blinked before the billionaire put his drink down, started to talk. Wait, you mean a large clan, right? There is no historical evidence of militarized villages full of ninja. Which is why I believe he is from the future's past. That along with the fact he holds a demon with a seal with kanji that was written on it far too advanced for the period, and having a sower for a soulscape. As we know, the Romans developed the first sower system, and it had taken time for the Eastern nations to duplicate their sowers. Strange explained, a soulscape, also known to some as a mindscape, is where a spiritual manifestation of oneself can explore and attempt to fix their souls. The boy has no family ties, which is proven by the single destination within the sower, otherwise he would have more branching tunnels with a much brighter landscape. I believe, gentlemen, that young Naruto has been abused and was a foster child. Out hell want a pity party, muttered Tony as he poured a refill for his drink. Bruce sat down and ran a hand over his face. Mental, emotional, physical? He asked. Strange sighed. Most likely emotional. Sowers or other dreary locations tend to reflect on sorrow, heavy sorrow, the sorcerer replied as he rubbed his head, but until I can talk with him about it. Master Strange. Wong interrupted by poking into the room, earning the men's attention. Has ready. Strange nodded and looked at his two house guests. We'll continue this another time, gentlemen. Is that the corpse of a Vulp's Corsac? Banner asked as Wong carefully laid the body of a gray-furred fox down next to the blonde teen. The scientist knelt next to the animal's corpse and examined it. It was about 3 feet long total, from head to tail at least. The body itself was just over 2 feet, whereas the tail was just shy of 1. Yes, this Corsac fox was raised by the Ancient One, Master Strange's former master, Wong answered as he smiled sadly down at the animal's form, fond memories of the creature in question coming to mind. Shaking the feeling off, Wong placed a hand on the scientist's shoulder. Please step back and follow me, we must leave this to Master Strange. Tony, who was skeptical, frowned. Yeah, I think he'll be staying here, no disrespect to you, Strange, but I would prefer to see this in person. If that's what you wish, please refrain from interfering with this as it is a tedious process, that's all I ask. Now, if it's not too much trouble, I will begin, Doctor, Strange said as he stood with his hands extended over the teen's body. Wong and Bruce stepped back, further than the billionaire was, and watched with curiosity. Wong had heard of the technique his master was about to use, but he had never seen it, whereas Bruce, as a scientist, was just curious in general of the ability he was about to witness. Strange took a large inhale of air before he spoke in an ancient language that sounded like gibberish to Tony and Bruce, souls occupying one body and mind, separate. Power of the demon god, release your owner. Soul transfer. There was a large flash of light, causing the two Avengers to shield their eyes, before it died down, and Strange sighed. Tony blinked several times before he spoke. What, that's it? Hopefully, yes, the Sorcerer Supreme answered with a nod, before kneeling down to scoop the fox up. For now, I will place the demon in a sealed room until it wakens. Humph, you think of me as merely a mortal, the fox said, its mouth moving like a human's would. Tony and Bruce blinked several times as their jaws became unhinged and popped open. The former found himself attempting to find words, his mouth moving like he were a fish out of water, whereas the latter quickly overcame his shock and approached the fox. Bruce placed 2 fingers on the fox's neck, ignoring the warning growl given, and looked at his watch. He blinked before putting a finger over the fox's right eye and his thumb underneath it, using a small flashlight Wong handed to him to examine the pupil. This is amazing. Bruce said in awe after examining the fox and moving to touch it. It's alive. Strange, you really brought it back to life. How? The people we could save. Hey. Flesh bag. I'm not undead. The fox spat, nipping at the scientist's hand. I'm the Kyuubi no Kitsune and more like the Ichibi no Kitsune, Kurama, Strange interjected with a smirk. Kurama's mouth froze before he looked up with hardened red eyes glaring at the amused magician. No words can accurately describe how much I despise you right now, sorcerer, Kurama growled lowly before looking over at the covered blonde. Smirking, he said, ha. The little flesh bag can't handle my absence. I wonder if he'll die. Oh, I hope he does. Now why would you hope that? Strange asked with a smirk, getting a deadpan look from the fox. The sorcerer placed the fox on a desk that he wheeled into the room and crossed his arms. Why would I remove the one thing that binds you to that boy? Speak clearly, sorcerer, what do you mean? Kurama demanded, stomping his much smaller front left paw in anger. Bruce and Wong chuckled, one because he was reminded of a cartoon, while the other was amused that the former demon lord had seemed to forget that he now had a smaller body. The effect of his visual disapproval was more humorous than frightening. Tony was still mimicking a fish. His mind still trying to rationalize what he just saw. Sure, gods and aliens were one thing, but demons. That was a whole new ballgame for the armored hero. "The seal, stupid fox," replied the Sorcerer Supreme with an eye roll. "Why would I remove it?" Kurama blinked, his mouth opened and then quickly shut before the fox hung its head. "Damn it. The one question I have is how did you learn English so fast?" Strange asked, stroking his beard as he thought. The small fox looked up with a sly smirk. "You think I missed your earlier words when you first entered? When I resided within the boy I had a good control over his soulscape, intruders were noted, especially that damned Yamanaka clan, but the horrors I made them see, good times." The fox trailed off as he chuckled at the memories. Dr. Strange crossed his arms once again and one of his brows arched. Before he could scold the fox for abusing the minds of other beings, Tony finally regained his ability to speak. "Oh dear Christ, I've gotta lay off the scotch." The gathered few looked at the billionaire strangely before looking back at the snickering fox. Kurama sobered up and looked at the still slightly glaring Sorcerer Supreme. Innocently, he asked, "What? Did you at least give young Naruto the knowledge of how to speak our language?" Strange asked. Kurama smirked. "Let the boy figure it out on his own," the fox replied. Dr. Strange pinched the bridge of his nose and released a groan. Why were all highly powerful entities and demons dicks when it came to sharing knowledge? The sorcerer's thoughts were interrupted by a yelp, and he looked up to see Wong holding the tan fox by the scruff of its neck. "You will give the boy your knowledge on English, or I will skin you alive for every year it took you to grow your tails," the man threatened in a different language while a neutral look remained on his face. Even Drive, Strange hadn't seen Wong act so sadistic and cruel when they last faced his evil foe Dormammu. But it was possibly due to the fact that the young monk sorcerer in training had seen the original owner of the corpse and raised it alongside the ancient one. He did have to admit he was impressed by how large the fox's eyes grew. The laughter that followed was disconcerting, though. "Foolish human. I was born a Kyuubi. Your threats hold no weight against me." Kurama sneered to the aide. Wong blinked before smiling sweetly. "Oh well, don't say I didn't warn you," he said before pulling out a razor. Tony blinked before he snickered. Bruce and Strange looked at the eccentric billionaire in concern, his snickering quieting as Wong approached the fox. Tony looked at his two fellow witnesses before asking, "What? I'm the only one that sees the humor in that. Come on. It's a talking fox going to get shaved. How is that not funny?" "I'm starting to wonder if Captain Rogers was right about you," Bruce slowly replied, getting a frown from the inventor. "Traitor." Bruce merely granted his friend a sly, timid smirk in response. Naruto groaned as he slowly came to, vaguely noting the different language being spoken nearby. The blonde blinked once before bringing his left hand up to hold his face as he sat up, his head pounded as he rose to fast to an upright position, the blanket on his chest falling to his waist, maintaining his modesty. A hand lightly gripped his shoulder and a familiar voice spoke, "Here, Naruto-san. Drink this." The cool glass was placed into his right hand, a droplet falling over his thumb. He brought the edge to his lips and eagerly tilted it back, swallowing the cool water that was within. Only a few seconds in, Naruto coughed as the water went down a wrong pipe. Damn kid still has no patience," a familiar voice taunted. Naruto lowered the glass from his hand and glared at the speaker, his eyes landing on the first fox-like form he could find. It took a moment for it to sink in, the smaller form, lighter coat, and the not-so-malicious eyes looking back at him. "What the hell are they saying?" Tony asked. Bruce looked at him with an arched brow of amusement. The billionaire then asked, "What? Does everyone here speak Japanese but me? Don't you run a multinational company?" The scientist asked with a bit of mirth in his voice. At Tony's confused look, Bruce rolled his eyes before he elaborated. "This whole thing's thrown you off, hasn't it? You've had to have had meetings in a Japanese country, right?" Tony groaned. "Ugh, that's Pepper's scene, those guys are so stiff, it's no fun." Bruce shook his head. "I swear, you're by far the strangest CEO I've ever met." "What are they saying?" Naruto asked Drive. Strange, the sorcerer looked at the fox with a glower, earning a very human-like smirk, before the man with a shaved head switched on some hair clippers. Naruto laughed when the much smaller creature he had feared once long ago whined and his ears fell back. Kurama growled before locking eyes with the boy and flared the minuscule amount of energy he had. Naruto gasped as the knowledge entered his mind, and he grabbed his head with a loud groan. Dr. Strange braced the blonde by his shoulders, keeping him sitting up, before he spoke. "Did it work? Can you understand me, Naruto?" "Ugh, you're too loud, Dr. Strange," Naruto groaned in English, his voice having a slight Brooklyn accent to it. What happened to my voice? You damn fox, what you do to my voice?" While Naruto was demanding answers from the smirking fox, Tony looked at Bruce and asked, highly advanced neurological implant, right? Bruce eyed Tony, I don't think it was a machine that did that. Oh come on. Don't tell me you believe in all that mumbo-jumbo crap, the inventor said, and when he got an unsure shrug, Tony sighed, well, shit, this definitely means more homework for me. Naruto, who was still ranting, was cut off by a low growl. Every set of eyes in the room locked onto the now blushing teen as he moved one hand to his stomach, scratching the back of his head. Naruto sheepishly asked, you guys won't happen to have ramen, would you? No ramen. The eyes then went to the growling fox. Kurama ignored them and looked at Strange directly before he spoke again. The kid is addicted to ramen, I swear. What he needs is nutrients, vitamins, and meat, lots and lots of meat. Hey. Ramen has meat. Naruto defended, the fox snorted. Please, if it weren't for me manipulating the fats and salts in your damned noodles, you'd still be a little midget of a hairless ape. The Kyuubi snarled before stamping his right paw. If I wanted the being that contained my power to die from malnourishment, it'd have ensured it long ago. Until I get my power back, you will not die, Ninjin, am I understood? You ain't the boss of me. I have free reign over your power now. Naruto shot back, entering a glaring contest with the animal. Bruce and Tony, as awestruck as they were, both had to resist from smacking their faces. What kind of idiot fights to eat only ramen? Though there was much for them to learn. If I may, Wong interjected, before a shouting match between the two could fully begin. Naruto was it. Receiving a nod, the aide continued, Naruto, despite its reasons, the fox is right, you need nutrients if you wish to continue to grow. Ramen, although a filling meal, contains none of the required nutrients for a healthy body. The blonde frowned and crossed his arms, so? Oh boy, Strange thought before he spoke, Naruto, you need to be at the highest peak of health if you want to gain control over that power. If you were to only eat ramen for the rest of your life, you'd get some sort of heart condition. Didn't happen before I was still manipulating it, you idiot. Kurama interrupted the blonde with a sharp snarl, you want to get back home, right? Then listen to me. Why should I listen to you? Naruto countered with a growl of his own, for all I know, you're still inside me, and this is an attempt to take over my body. Oh, for the love of, would someone please just get him some ramen? Tony shouted, the eyes turned to the billionaire and he rolled his own, the kid's too stubborn. Get him one bowl and explain everything then, as it is, he'll die of starvation before we get him to listen to any of us. The group stared at him for a long time before Tony arched a brow, what? None of you have been teenagers before. The resounding silence frightened him. So, I'm in a different dimension? Naruto asked before he slurped up the rest of the bowl he had, after Tony, the man with the slightly glowing chest, had stood up for him and his ramen. Naruto was given a pair of pants and a white shirt before the group left him alone to get dressed. Wong, the young man in a changshan, had gotten him what Naruto would call an appetizer and drive. Strange began explaining the world he was in. Strange nodded, indeed, here, we have a vague knowledge of the many branches of galaxies within our universe. A good distance away we have a planetoid known as Asgard, home to the Asgardian race. There a defender of our planet, Earth, resides. If you stick around you may meet him, and as it is, he may be your best ticket home. Oh sure, it's just a hop, skip and a fucking billion light years away, Tony interjected with a snort, the kid's better off just trying to get used to our planet. There's a thought, Doctor, Strange mused. Naruto, however, disagreed, no. I have Tog at home. I have to save Sasuke. Kid, I don't know who this Sasuke guy is, friend, boyfriend, does everyone know about that fucking incident? Okay, anyway, you might want to just relax a little bit, Tony suggested after Naruto exploded, his face red with embarrassment. The point is, until Thor comes back, you're stuck here, unless the good sorcerer can open a portal back home. Naruto's quickly rising hopes were squashed when said Sorcerer Supreme shook his head. I have limited knowledge of dimensional hopping. I do know that like time travel, it can be very dangerous to attempt. But how much we know now, it may not be that much longer, Bruce, who Naruto recognized vaguely as the man that changed into a huge green guy, said. Fury either still hasn't noticed Tony's hack or has been feeding us information to keep us in the loop. The scientists working for S.H.I.E.L.D. have been trying to replicate the transportation qualities of the Tesseract. At this, the quiet small fox perked up, Tesseract? Do you mean the power cosmic? You mortals are playing with the power cosmic. Tony, Bruce, and Strange looked to the fox, sighing the possessed corpse spoke once more, my father, the sage of six paths, had access to chakra, energy that resides in every living force, from the trees to the humans, chakra was everywhere, however, he told my brethren and myself how he learned of it before his death, a small blue cube of pure energy had arrived on our world. Likely at the same time as yours, only, it wasn't hidden, one man picked it up, absorbed its knowledge, and then sent it on its merry way. Take a guess as to who that man was, and where I got most of my power from. Doctor Strange stroked his beard before he realized what this could mean. If that's true, then Naruto has control over energy within the Tesseract. Bruce finished. Tony rubbed his head as he looked at the very confused blonde. Dear God, if Fury ever found out, he trailed off before shaking his head. No, that can't happen. They'd be treated like me, Bruce applied somberly. I won't let it happen, no one deserves to be hunted. What are you guys talking about? A concerned Naruto asked, only to be ignored. We need to make an identity for him, Tony said as he whipped his phone out and began hacking, set him up in a school, give him the basic knowledge that he needs to know. Pepper and I can take him in just before his school starts so he can remain nearby, Tony said. Stark Tower is going to be completed around that time, and I think we'd be able to give him some tips on how to blend in. Because that's what you're good at, Bruce said with a smirk, ignoring his friend's scowl. Bruce continued, I could help him contain his emotions I guess, maybe his abilities are powered by that. The fox will stay with me, Doctor Strange said, getting a growl from the possessed corpse. I don't trust it, not yet. Fine. Would someone please tell me what's going on? Naruto exclaimed with his hands above his head, not noticing the blue glow that encased them. The crystals hanging from the chandelier in the room suddenly exploded just after his exclamation. All eyes went to Naruto. After a long silence, Tony spoke. Bruce. Yeah? You might want to start teaching him, the billionaire said. The chain keeping the chandelier in the air snapped and fell to the ground, resulting in a large bang. Once the room stilled once again, Tony finished his thought from before. Now. Focus your breathing, Bruce said to the wayward shinobi. They now sat in an empty room within the Sanctum Sanctorum, under the watchful eye of Drive Strange, while Wong helped Tony create a new identity for the blonde. The young teen was currently shirtless as was his teacher, sitting across from him in the lotus position. Steven had suggested they first have Naruto try to get a grasp over the power. Naruto took in some air as he sat with closed eyes, trying to get a feel for this new power. He could barely feel the Kyuubi taint, that small bit of evil that was within his chakra, but his chakra felt more pure, it felt potent and powerful, like he was one of the only people that could manipulate it. A blue glow started to appear around the blonde, similar to the bright red that the Hulk had fought before, but not quite, it was more natural. Naruto's eyes beneath his eyelids became solid wide orbs as his hair, face, and body all seemed to become the shade of his eyes. Bruce had to resist the urge to stare in awe. Focusing on the device in his hands that would read the various radiations coming off of the teen, small amounts of gamma. Alright Naruto, that's enough, Bruce said to the teen. Naruto didn't seem to hear him, and a blue light continued to grow out from his place in the lotus position. A sphere appeared around him, and Bruce found himself backing away as his device beeped an alarm. The teen started to levitate, and his mouth opened slightly as he breathed, revealing that his internal colorings had changed to a light yellowish white, while his whiskers seemed to start glowing. Naruto. Bruce called out to the boy once more, stirring him from his meditation. Naruto's eyes snapped open, now a bright yellow like the 3 marks on his face and the inside of his mouth. The light died down, and Naruto fell back to the floor, spread eagle and panting heavily. Sighing in relief, Bruce walked over to the teen and knelt next to him, putting the scanner next to the half-naked teen's head and asked, so how'd it feel? Opening his once again blue eyes, the blonde gave a small grin as he replied, it felt magnificent. Addicting magnificent or something else? The scientist asked. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. It just felt warm, Yano. Kind of like being hugged and being safe. I felt like I could have done anything, even go home. He trailed off before asking, do you think I could, would it be possible? Naruto, you may be onto something, Bruce said before frowning, but don't start using it willy-nilly, okay? We don't know what the repercussions of this power could be. Dr. Banner is right, Naruto, Strange said as he stepped forward. With great power comes great responsibility. Can you be responsible to not use it consciously? No, not yet, but soon you will be able to. Then I could maybe go home, right? Naruto asked. Strange began to nod when he suddenly stilled and looked to the sky. I sense something, he said with a frown before looking at the two staring at him curiously. Continue with your meditation, minus tapping into the powers. I'll send Wong to assist you. Drive, Banner, I must go meditate. But that and a curt nod, Dr. Strange left the room in a worried stride. He could have sworn that he felt a ripple in the planet's magical shield, but it should have been impossible. He didn't sense any evil entity or force along with the ripple. Naruto groaned as he trudged down the hallway of the Sanctum Sanctorum. It had been a month since he arrived in this millionth dimension, and he had only just managed to learn to gain some control over his power cosmic abilities last night. The phrase chakra control S, as Kakashi had called him once during a training session, failed to apply to him anymore, according to the Sorcerer Supreme. Like before, he could scale buildings by walking up them and make grand leaps, but according to Drive Strange, soon enough he might be able to fly. Wouldn't Sasuke team be surprised then? Naruto mused with a bragging smirk crossing his face before it fell once more as he remembered Drive, Strange's words, his reclamation of the sorcerer's favorite cautionary phrase, to keep the blonde from getting his hopes too high, his constantly moving thoughts, then brought him back to what today's session was going to be. Sparring. Now normally, Naruto would enjoy sparring, as he lasted the longest due to his immense amount of chakra and, had he used his brain before, would have won eventually against Sasuke, and the guy actually fought pretty well, so Naruto thought he was growing from it, he would have been, had Kakashi taken the time to explain to Naruto his flaws in certain strikes or attacks. Like he did for Sasuke, not that Naruto knew that. However, this wasn't like that sparring, this was more or less learning on the fly, it could even be called a fight for his life, sure, he normally learned through kinetic theory, which is the act of learning by doing, but this was actual survival combat against Drive, Bruce Banner, or rather his alter ego, the Hulk. The big green oaf, as Tony called him, was vigorously violent and Naruto was sure scratch that, Naruto was positive that he still had a mild concussion from last Tuesday's sparring session. He didn't know that the Hulk could kick that hard when he wanted to, but like they say, you learn something new every day. Stopping in front of the pentagram-marked door, Naruto lifted his hand to knock on it when Wong suddenly gripped his other arm tightly. Across Wong's shoulders rested Kurama, the former Kyuubi no Kitsune of his dimension, but something was off. The fox hadn't taunted him upon approach. Granted, he and the little resurrected furball had gotten into a much more healthier relationship over the past month, but it was still the beast that killed Shinobi from his village, the Yondaime, and he was the boy that still contained the Bijus chakra. Kurama and Wong would often be seen together or the fox with Drive, Strange, Naruto wasn't sure. But he had suggested that Kurama was attempting to possess Wong, only to be proven wrong when Drive, Strange admitted he had thought of that earlier and tested for it. The Sorcerer Supreme then said that he believed the new spirit in the body had taken to some of the old body's memories, such as hopping on Wong's shoulder or recognizing Wong as one who had raised him. Whoa. Wong, where's the fire? Naruto asked, surprised by the rushed grip that was threatening to pull his arm out of his socket. Wong whipped his head back to look at the younger man, the aide's eyes narrowed into stern orbs. Quite. Doctor, Banner has a guess that we'd rather didn't know about you, Wong hissed as he pulled Naruto along. The blonde, confused and now slightly concerned, complied with the order and followed the monk-like sorcerer butler with a fox draped over his shoulders. Upstairs, one Bruce Banner was internally sweating as he stood across from someone he didn't want to see ever again. General Thaddeus E. Thunderbolt Ross. The man whose career went down the drain because of not one, but two failed attempts to duplicate the super soldier serum. He really hoped that Ross wasn't here to cause trouble. Banner, the general said with his gruff tone, I heard they found him. Bruce blinked several times before he realized what Ross was, or rather wasn't, asking and mentally interpreted his statement as. Did they really find Captain America? That's a good man, Bruce admitted timidly, just barely able to force a smile on his face. I think Hess been hanging out near Queens and trying to rediscover his hometown, a lot has changed since he was last there. Ross hummed before he looked to his escort, the sunglasses-wearing man with a quiver on his back, nodded once and the general frowned. Ross turned to leave before looking back at Banner. Your lucky shield wants the Hulk alive, but y'all screw up, you always do, Banner, and he'll be there waiting when that happens. That's enough, General, the sunglasses-wearing man warned, putting a hand on Ross' shoulder. You got your word with Drive, Banner, now beat it before I tell Fury that the abomination escaped, again. Ross scowled at the man before leaving the sanctum walking out to a Humvee where two armed soldiers waited for him. Once Ross entered the vehicle and said Humvee drove off, the remaining man shook his head, looking at Bruce. The man gave a friendly grin and offered his hand. Great to see you, Doc, sorry about that, orders from above and all. It's no problem, Bruce replied with a small smile as he took the offered hand and shook it once. Glad to see you're well, Agent Barton, how's Agent Romanov? I'm pleased to say Natasha and I are doing just fine, Clint Hawkeye Barton replied with a smirk before looking around, and I thought Tony would be here. What, the big bad billionaire off partying again? Bruce chuckled, no, Hess just getting something set up for a mutual friend of ours, can I get you anything? No, I'm good. Oh, by any chance have you heard from Captain Rogers? Clint asked, a glisten of concern in his eye. Hess gone missing, Fury's got Hill on the case, but between you and I, Shess not as good at finding things, let alone people, as others are. The timid smile on his face vanished as Bruce frowned. No, but I can ask Drive, Strange to assist in the search. Where was he last seen? He was investigating a report of a possible Tesseract activity, the dark-haired archer replied with a frown. We lost him on the borders of a small country known as Latveria. Latveria? Bruce repeated before frowning and rubbing his chin. Why does that sound familiar? I don't know, but I gotta get back to the carrier, Clint sighed. An astronaut, two scientists, and the younger brother of one of the scientists are having severe reactions to some sort of cosmic radiation. Bruce looked up, say again. Clint chuckled, actually it's kind of funny, some of us on the carrier are calling them the Fantastic Four, with how they've changed. No, the thing about the radiation, the scientist said, what kind of radiation were they exposed to? Cosmic radiation, stuff similar to the Tesseract's readings, the SHIELD agent replied nonchalantly, one of them has been physically changed permanently, shame too, Grimm didn't deserve that, Hess a good guy. Grimm? As in, Ben Grimm the astronaut. Who stopped the panel of the International Space Station from breaking off? Getting a nod, Bruce felt his stomach drop before he continued, the scientists, they wouldn't be Reed Richards and Sue Storm would they? Clint smirked and crossed his arms, Bruce, I thought hacking into SHIELD's files was Stark's pastime. Bruce forced a smile at the agent's joke, well internally he wondered just what this incident had in relation to Naruto's power, there was too much of a coincidence for the two forces not to be related, in Banner's mind, Clint gave the man another handshake before he left the sanctum. Bruce went to the window to watch the archer speed off on a black Kawasaki Ninja before he ran down the hall to find Naruto. Said blonde power cosmic user was flipping through the original Captain America comic issue number 3, it was little known, but Stephen Strange was just as avid a fan of the super soldier as the Agent Johnson that Tony liked to talk about. Strange used his powers of mystics to preserve the issues despite their age and their use. They snapped back to the original print once someone had finished reading them. Naruto had to give it to this Rogers guy, he was the ultimate hero though, the Nazi group reminded him of someone back in his home village, but he couldn't remember whom exactly. Naruto. The blonde looked up from his comic, giving a foxy grin to the Gamma expert as he slowed from his jog to stop in front of the blonde. Hey drive, Banner. Naruto greeted, closing the comic and carefully putting it back in its case, where it glowed briefly before reverting to pristine condition. The blonde snapped from his quick awe at the magic, focusing on the scientist once again, what? Your big bad friend too afraid to get his ass kicked today? Bruce frowned, Naruto, do you remember what happened a month ago? A month? Naruto blinked in confusion before crossing his arms and thinking, when it hit him he snapped his fingers and beamed, oh yeah. I activated my power cosmic form for the first time after the fox was pulled out of my gut. Yes, but did you feel anything from that? The brown-haired scientist asked urgently, his panic slightly dimmed when he was granted a response. I felt power. I don't know, Dr. Banner, Naruto sighed as he rubbed his neck, I'm too accustomed to the cosmic now, I can't remember feeling anything that different. Oh, right, sorry, Naruto, apologized the scientist as he remembered that Naruto was still learning about his powers, there was no way the blonde would know that he possibly mutated 4 people in space. Right. Run that by me again, Jarvis. Tony asked as he hacked into the Internal Revenue Service database. The billionaire was still setting up the dimension-traveling ninja's identity, and after being set back by constant firewalls, calls from a certain one-eyed director of a certain agency named after a type of armor one held in their hand, and a few warnings from his best friend. Naruto Uzumaki was nearly a real person. Until Jarvis picked up on something that set back all of their work. Sir, there's already a recorded Naruto Uzumaki in the databanks of Tokyo, Japan, the AI informed his creator. It appears the boy is a delinquent and has a rather lengthy record with the authorities, perhaps if we place our youth under a different name. Well shit, Tony thought as he leaned back, can you pull an image up? As Tony feared, there in front of him was the power cosmic using teen's dimensional counterpart, holding a place card with various kanji placed on it, his left eye was black, and there was a fresh cut on the right side of his bottom lip, other than the signs of a physical altercation, the boy was a carbon copy of the most recent addition to their dimension. Unfortunately, this young man is a 97-85% match for Drive, Banner's guest, Jarvis informed the billionaire. Any attempt to enroll him under this identification would result in a full SHIELD investigation, not to mention the potential fallout that would occur if the two were ever to meet. Great, now what do I do? Tony muttered to himself with a frown, 2 arms suddenly wrapped around his neck in a light hug, and the billionaire turned hero grin before he looked up to give a greeting kiss to his girlfriend. Breaking from the kiss, he said, hello Pepper. Hello to you, too, I think, the red-deeded woman said with a playful smile crossing her face as she looked at the image. So, is Fury having you look for a blonde teen, or is this a side project? It's actually the latter, but not in the way you're thinking, Stark replied with a smirk, getting a light swat from the red-deed for his lewd humor. The man sighed afterwards and shut the image off before looking back at the holoscreen for the IRS databanks. A friend of Bruce's has gotten into a bit of a jam. Is this about that incident at Drive, Strange's home you told me you couldn't tell me about? She asked, the whole magic thing. Tony chuckled, you're too smart for your own good, Pep, how are you supposed to play innocent if I tell you everything? The same way you sleep on the couch alone if you don't tell me anything, Pepper replied with a smirk. At Tony's horrified look, she giggled, you're lucky Jarvis told me all about Naruto. I do apologize, sir, Ms. Potts is rather persuasive when she wants to be, the AI said apologetically. Tony frowned and glared at the panel on the wall. Traitor, he muttered before looking at his girlfriend with a bit of disapproval. Alright, miss, interrogate my personal artificial intelligence. That boy is this dimension's Naruto Uzumaki. The kid down at the Sanctum Sanctorum is from a very distant dimension and needs some identification to keep Fury and his goons from sticking him on a table. Is he really that different? Pepper asked with a frown. Tony chuckled, that's an understatement. In his home dimension Hess a soldier, trained to fight and kill. Poor kid's barely 16, too, you should see him when he activates the cosmic power of his. Cosmic. Ah, sorry, get this, the boy's dimension has its own tesseract, unlike us, where we have advanced technology and we slowly evolved. His people have managed to develop abilities that would make Thor envious, controlling elements, making solid clones, creating illusions, you name it, and that kid can probably do it, the inventor said with a hint of envy, leaning back in his seat. Tony frowned. However, Hess gonna end up trapped at the Santorum if I can't get him an ID. Pepper frowned as well, looking at the forgery page that was up on the thin holo screen. Before reaching out and grabbing it, pulling it closer, Pepper began scanning over what Tony had done so far. The blonde's name, birthday, and blood type were all set. However, the country of origin and a background was what was holding Tony up. If he simply put down United States of America, SHIELD would be obligated to check it out, and for some reason, Tony didn't want that, most likely due to the fact the boy had powers that would rival a god if what Tony said was true. A sudden light bulb went off in Pepper's head and she shoved Tony out of the way. The billionaire inventor yelped as his swiveling chair rolled to the side while his girlfriend started typing at a rapid pace. Scooting back to where Pepper stood, Tony started reading what she was typing and a grin crossed his face. Kissing the red-deeded woman on the cheek, not even making her blink, Tony asked with a smile, have I ever told you that you're brilliant? Several times, Pepper replied with a smirk as she continued to type. The next day, Naruto was in Strange's library, reading an original issue of Superman and chewing on a Twizzler. He had become a fan of the red, stringy candy, specifically the strawberry flavor that was the face of the product, and tended to be nibbling on one whenever he could get away with it, which was surprisingly not often. Wong was rather adamant about him sticking to a healthy nutrition. Reminding him of Kakashi in a way, the one-eyed Jonin would often chastise Naruto about not eating his fruits, Bleck, dropping off the occasional basket of fruits just to annoy him. Naruto was just coming to the turning point of the comic, which would reveal who was behind the release of a muscular green Jimmy Olsen clone, when a hand smacked him upside the head. The blonde, spooked, threw the comic in the air and yelped before holding a hand against the abused area. Damn it, Tony. Naruto swore as he spun around to glare at the grinning man. Doc Strange will have my hide if he sees Twizzlers on the floor. While the blonde started to pick up the spilled candies, Tony chuckled, sorry, Naruto, just thought it'd surprise you with some good news. Yeah? What? The blonde asked in a distracted manner, still picking up the Twizzlers while determining which were safe to put back in the package and which were trash. The 5-second rule was awesome. I've finished your ID. Tony announced with a smile. Naruto instantly turned on the man with shock written on his face. The Twizzlers in his hands dropped and immediately forgotten. Really? Does that mean I can finally get out of here? The blonde from another dimension asked eagerly. Yup. Tony replied, mimicking the teen's enthusiasm before he sighed, but there's one condition. That sobered Naruto up quickly, almost timidly, and making Tony briefly feel guilty for pulling this trick. The teen asked, what's the condition? Well, I have to adopt you. And like that, the ominous aura in the air vanished, leaving Tony with the rare sight of a confused and disbelieving Naruto gaping at him. The billionaire couldn't take the sight for long before he burst into laughter. Naruto broke the silence with a cautionary, "You're serious?" "Hell yeah," Tony replied as his laughter died down to chuckles. "Who, man, kid, you should seen your face. I should had Jarvis take a picture." Naruto's shocked face turned into a smiling one before he launched himself at the man and hugged him. Tony, although surprised by the action, welcomed it with a hug of his own. While he may not like being handed things, hugging things were a different story altogether. He is the face of a multi-billion-dollar company. Hugging people is practically part of the job. "Let's go find the magic man and Bruce, then it'll take you back to Stark Tower to meet Pepper," Tony suggested when Naruto released him. He got a beaming smile from the teen that made him sure Pepper's idea was not only a good one, but also the best one. Naruto gaped as he stared up at Stark Tower while Tony escorted him via his Audi R8. The blonde had nothing aside from the jeans and white t-shirt that Wong had supplied him with a month ago, but Tony assured him that would all change once Pepper got a hold of him. The blonde wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing yet. Since the playful toned Stark had turned into one of slight fear, Naruto was sure he saw a shudder, too. "Pretty intense, isn't it?" The billionaire's voice snapped Naruto from his ogling of the tower. Tony chuckled, "Yeah, shush my baby. Correct me if I'm wrong sir, but didn't Ms. Potts insist that her name be on the foundation? Jarvis asked from the hood of the car. Tony grimaced as Naruto furrowed his brows in confusion. He may be adjusting well to certain things, but others still went over his head. He was only 15, what do you expect? Don't tell him that Jarvis. Tony complained to the AI, looking to his passenger as the artificial intelligence took over control of the car for the technologically advanced parking even beyond Tony's skills, i.e., parallel parking. The raven-haired genius laid out the ground rules. Okay, rules are simple. Number 1. Don't hand me things from people dressed in suits, I really don't like that. Number 2. Only you, Pepper, Bruce, and I can use the private elevator. I have to stress this because some people just don't understand that. Number 3 and the most important one according to Pepper. Put the seat down after you're done. However, my final and most important rule is absolutely no parties in the tower without me present. Naruto snickered at the last rule, getting a smirk from Tony as they stepped out of the Audi. The duo walked to the elevator and entered. After a lengthy ride, the doors opened to reveal a red-headed woman with her hair pulled back into a ponytail. She was dressed in a navy blouse and black skirt, heels adorning her feet. Compared to the laid-back attire of Tony and borderline white trash clothes of Naruto, she was of a higher class. "You're both late," the woman said with a shake of her head as she approached Tony. The raven-haired billionaire greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. Naruto pieced together this fact immediately with what he knew about Tony's faceless girlfriend and deduced that this woman was Pepper Potts. She gave the younger blonde teen a friendly smile, holding a hand out. "You must be Naruto, I've heard a bit about you," Pepper said as the teen took her hand in a light handshake. Pepper Potts, CEO of Stark Industries and the Tin Head's girlfriend. "Ah, Pepper, you wound me with your words," Tony dramatically exclaimed as he placed a hand over his chest, covering his electromagnet with his hand. The red-headed woman glanced at him with a smirk. "That was the plan, Tony," she replied as the man pouted. Naruto snickered. He had noticed that Tony was a child in an adult's body sometimes. "See what I put up with, kid?" the billionaire asked with his thumb gesturing to Pepper before he looked at his girlfriend. "Now, what paperwork does he have to sign so that Fury and his boys aren't breathing down our necks?" "Well, we might have a teeny bit of a bump in that regard," Pepper replied after a moment of hesitation. Naruto's battle instinct suddenly came alive as a cold tube pressed against the back of his head and he felt multiple sets of eyes lock on his form. Acting fast, he spun around and grabbed the barrel of the gun aimed at him, pushing it down and punching his would-be assailant in the face. The soldier, a woman with her raven hair cut short and wearing a dark navy battle suit, flew backwards before she was caught by a man with a quiver strapped to his back. "Ah, ah, ah," a sultry female voice warned the blonde as another barrel pressed against his head and an arm wrapped around his neck. "That was impressive, but we just need to talk to Mr. Stark." "Hey, lay off the kid, Romanoff," Tony growled before facing the tall African-American that stepped out of the revealed black SUV. He was 6'2" and built in a way that showed he could still defend himself if necessary. He wore a tight black shirt, black military cargos, combat boots and a dark trench coat that allowed him to easily blend into the shadows. His identifying feature was the eye patch he had covering his scarred left eye. Tony crossed his arms and frowned. "You caught on faster than I anticipated." "You forgot that I said I have my eye on you," coolly replied the one-eyed man before he poked the former weapons manufacturer on the chest. "And trying to hide this kid was like shooting a flare into the clear night sky. Then there's a huge power flux, giving off readings similar to the Tesseract in the heart of New York, and you have the audacity to believe SHIELD won't track it." "Well, I had hoped," Tony admitted before looking at Natasha. "Please take your gun off his head. Don't get all Stark on me. Now I have 4 people whose lives are changed forever, and it's all because of that kid you seem so intent on hiding from me," Director Fury said, pointing at the increasingly irritated blonde, whose eyes were flickering to yellow. "Yeah, I'll send Richards a funding check and some compensation for his space station going kaboom," Tony retorted before looking at the SHIELD agent holding his son hostage. "I won't ask again, Natasha, let him go." "Stop trying to change the subject," Fury barked. "I'm trying to save your lives," Tony retorted, but it was too late. Naruto had just about enough at seeing his new family and himself being held at gunpoint. He clenched his fists and released a yell before his energy release shook Agent Romanoff from his shoulders, radiating with the power cosmic enough to burn through his thin shirt. Thank God his pants were layered with runes via drive. Strange. Drunk off the rage much like one of his mentors, Naruto looked at the people in black, armed and aiming weapons at him. The now glowing blue teen raised his left hand and a beam of energy hit the chest of the man holding a bow. Agent Barton followed his partner lover and impacted with a pillar, falling to the ground with a grunt. "Pepper." Tony called out in concern before rushing towards her and pulling her with him behind his car. Fury and Hill both started to take shots at the empowered teen, only for the bullets to bounce off his chest, golden eyes narrowed, and a hand was pointed at either of his assailants. After their clips were emptied, before he could attack, something smacked across the back of his head. Naruto stumbled forward and he turned to glare at his attacker. Hawkeye looked at his snapped bow with wide eyes and back at the teen before mumbling, "Talk about hard-headed." Naruto's true consciousness gave a small grin at that, while the stoic face merely narrowed his brows before throwing a punch and connecting square with the man's jaw. Once again Hawkeye made friends with a concrete pillar, this time hitting the object hard enough to bend the frame and crack the shell. Another round of bullets made Naruto swivel around and take aim once again. Tony, who was covering Pepper, called out to the two SHIELD agents, "Stop shooting at him, you're not helping the situation." "Well, have you got any bright ideas?" Fury shouted back before giving out a cry as a burst of cosmic power struck him in the chest. Naruto took another step forward, while also blocking the attack. Agent Hill threw his way, the cosmic-powered teen, then wrapped his hand around the agent's neck and lifted her off the ground. "Put her down." Fury barked as he got back to his feet and took aim at the teen holding his agent. Naruto slowly turned and looked at the SHIELD director before he lightly tossed the agent in his grasp to the side. He stood across from Fury with his fists clenching and unclenching. Fury's jaw twitched, and he briefly glanced at his slowly rising agents. His eye then flickered back to the teen he had at gunpoint. Naruto hadn't stayed put while Fury's eye glanced around, and now he was in front of the man with his hand outstretched. Power cosmic was gathering in his hand. "Jarvis now," Tony announced as he jumped out from behind the car. Two bright red wristbands were now on either of his arms and flickering with light. Naruto swiveled around at the sound of mechanical shifting. Just as a bright red pod rose from the ground, Fury fought the urge to smirk. Of course Stark would have a backup plan. Naruto's head tilted as Jarvis spoke up, "I am sorry for this, Naruto." The pod burst open and out came the Iron Man Mk7 armor, cleaned, scrubbed, and ready to kick ass. Naruto was sent flying through the parking garage wall. As the armor responded to the wake-up programming installed in the bands on Tony's arms, the armor stopped and hovered in midair, its back panels opening up to reveal hollow mechanics. Tony sighed and stepped into the armor. "It's like dealing with Bruce all over again," mumbled the mechanic as the suit closed up around him. Iron Man was ready to go, but was not entirely willing. He turned and pointed at Fury. "This is your fault, no," Iron Man said before turning back to the hole he had created and burst through it with his thrusters. Nick Fury holstered his sidearm and looked at his agents. "Sir, shouldn't we pursue?" Agent Hill asked as she checked her ammo. Natasha let out a dry chuckle, and Clint looked at her like she had grown two heads. "You do remember that the kid just smacked us around like he was Drive Banner when he gets mad, right?" the archer asked as he held up his bow. "Let's not forget that this was crafted from vibranium." "Talk about a hard head," Natasha commented. Clint snorted. "That's what I said," he replied good-naturedly before looking at his superior officer. "No offense, Director, but maybe we jumped the gun on this one." "You think so?" Fury asked sarcastically before holding a hand up to his ear. "This is Fury, I want the streets cleared and a clean-up team prepped. We've got another 329. "We have a code for this sort of thing?" Clint asked. Fury looked at him. "We have a code for everything," replied the commander before he went to help a slightly shaken Pepper from her hiding spot. Naruto groaned as he slowly got up from the impact. Around him, the New Yorkers were keeping their distance, while also photographing the glowing blue being. Rolling his neck, Naruto looked around for the armor that had struck him. His true consciousness was curious about it, having only heard stories and descriptions from Drive Banner. But the power-drugged mind wanted a crack at whatever had attacked him. As luck would have it, Iron Man came down from the sky and landed as he usually did. On his right knee with the corresponding fist clanging on the blacktop in front of it, he stood and his faceplate popped open, revealing Tony Stark. "Hey, kid, sorry about that, I did say Fury was kind of an asshole, though," Tony said to the glowing teen. "Now how's about we just simmer down, go back and cuss the life out of Fury, huh?" Naruto said nothing, but slowly fell into a stance Tony had seen once before, when the blonde was sparring against Wong. Tony sighed, "So it's going to be like that then?" His faceplate fell back down, and Iron Man's eyes shone for a brief moment, then let's dance. Naruto pushed off the ground, cracking it as he did so. With his fist pulled back, Iron Man was struck across the face and sent flying back, stabilizing himself with his gauntlets repulsors in the middle of a street. A car swerved to avoid hitting him and crashed into a parked taxi. Iron Man leaned forward and shot towards the glowing teenager, unbeknownst to the man. Naruto's subconscious was taking note of how the armor flew. Iron Man drove his shoulder into the glowing teenager's gut, sending the teen flying away. The armored Avenger hovered in the air after delivering the blow. He wasn't expecting Naruto to come flying back at him in a similar manner. The user of power cosmic now hovered above the air with his palms facing the ground in a manner similar to Iron Man. What Naruto's subconsciousness had discovered was that thanks to his exercises with the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique, the blonde could actively analyze and break down something in mere seconds, if he so chose to. It was little things, such as Iron Man's flight or Hulk's brute strength. Okay, didn't see that coming, Iron Man groaned. Jarvis, what hit me? I believe it was Naruto, sir, the AI replied. The MK7 followed Tony's movements as he got back to his feet, thus putting Iron Man back in the game. He looked up to see Naruto hovering much like he did in Tist. Little copycat, the armored hero said before blasting the teen away with a low-powered repulsor shot to the chest. Naruto flew back through a car, giving Tony enough time to recover from Naruto's retaliation shove. Sir, it may take more than a simple shot to put Naruto down, Jarvis began. Perhaps we should use the unibeam. Let's shelf that idea for now, Tony said to his built-in computer. Iron Man locked onto Naruto's unique signature. He noticed the power cosmic using teen was hardly dazed, and he made a plan. Jarvis, give me a 30% boost in the thrusters and prep the elbow rocket. I also took the liberty of making a trajectory plan, the AI replied, as the HUD made several orbs behind Naruto, followed by a holographic red line. Good, sorry about this, kid, Iron Man said before he shot from his place on the ground and his left fist cocked back, the cap on the armor's elbow unlatched and a small thruster exposed itself, igniting almost instantly. As the armored Avenger came within striking distance, an anomaly was detected. The power-driven Naruto wasn't about to let himself get hit and an old attack reemerged in a strange way, the Rasengan as it was called formed around his right fist. The two threw their punches, both successfully striking their opponent in the jaw. Tony's faceplate exploded and Naruto was sent flying from the added momentum in the same predicted flight plan Tony's HUD had displayed moments before. Tony's eyes snapped open and he then closed them as his head throbbed, releasing a groan as he did so. Sleeping Beauty awakes, Fury's baritone voice said. Tony gave the man another groan in response as he sat up, taking a brief look around. Tony realized he was in his tower and not on Fury's flying battleship, something that relieved and concerned him all at the same time. He was sitting on his couch and on the coffee table was a small pill and a tin cup of coffee. Ugh, the kid sure packs a punch, Tony grumbled as he rubbed his jaw. Well, he mentally added, now I know how he can go toe-to-toe with Hulk. According to him, it's some sort of technique he learned back home, Fury said as the inventor swallowed the Advil. The director of SHIELD dropped a dossier file on the coffee table in front of the billionaire. Here's all the paperwork he needs. Word of advice, just tell us next time. Hopefully there won't be a next time, mumbled Tony with a frown as he set his coffee down and flipped through the files. Upon laying his eyes on the adoption papers, Tony gave an amused glance to the super spy Nicholas Howard Stark. He looks too European to have a name like Uzumaki Naruto, Fury replied and then glanced at Tony, and Nicholas is a good name. Right, Tony said with a barely noticeable smirk before he turned serious. Why are you helping me? I need a reason. Fury asked in a challenging tone. No one does anything out of the good of their heart anymore, Tony said before he held a finger up. Well, no one except the Avengers, but we're all doing our own thing right now. Alright, relented the director of SHIELD as he put his hands on his hips. In the past 2 years I have had to deal with arms dealer turned captive turned superhero, a man whose rage makes him unstoppable, a solider whose war is long over, and a god that accidentally leveled a town. Then I had to bring all these people under one roof. Well, the god's twisted half-brother led an alien army to invade my planet. Pausing to give the other man a tired look, Fury then said, I've had my fair share of this and am willing to let this one incident, and only this one incident, slide after I leave. If he does anything to threaten the world, I'm going to do exactly what you were trying to stop me from doing. Right now, this is me helping you. Remember what happened last time I helped you? Tony absent-mindedly scratched at his neck. Yeah, okay, but what about the kid? Does he know what happened? That's not my problem, Fury said as he stood up and went to the door. That's up to his father to find out. Have a nice day, Mr. Stark. Naruto blinked awake as he slowly came to. The last thing he remembered clearly was the barrel of a gun pressed against his head and some person threatening. Tony. Naruto cried out as he sat up, a hand pressed against his shoulder and slowly pushed him back down. Easy, easy, hey, there, Pepper said, smiling softly to the groaning teen as he put a hand on his head. The red-deeded woman looked up and spoke. Jarvis, how's he doing? All that remains are his minor scratches from bouncing off the side of Central Station. Once again, I'm sorry for that, Naruto, Jarvis apologized. Naruto rubbed his head as the memory slowly came back to him. Damn it. I lost control again, swore the blonde with a scowl on his face, his fist clenched at his side before he took a deep breath, held it for 10 seconds, and then exhaled. He closed his eyes and silently vowed it wouldn't happen again. A sharp pinch made him wince, and he opened his eyes to see Pepper holding a syringe filled with blood. Ow. What was that for? Naruto asked as he held his arm where the woman stuck him with a needle. Pepper put the blood in a vial before placing the vial in a machine. Double-checking your blood type in case you ever need blood transfusion, Pepper said as a holographic screen appeared in front of her. She furrowed her brows and asked, Jarvis, is there something wrong with the vial? Not at all, Ms. Potts, answered the AI as a screen came up next to Naruto, making said boy jump. The anomaly with his blood may come from his powers. I am getting readings identical to that of the S-H-I-E-L-D object known as the Tesseract. That's because my body produces the same energy, Naruto explained tiredly while rubbing his head. Ugh, my head hurts. You did go through several concrete walls and a bus, kid, Tony said as he stepped out of the elevator with a file under his arm. He walked over to Pepper and gave her a chaste kiss before handing her the file. Fury was nice enough to help us out. The tall dark-skinned guy with an eye patch? Naruto asked. Tony walked to the teen's side and grabbed his arm, pulling it out and examining it. Naruto grunted in surprise as Tony kept manhandling him, searching his body for something. Tony, what are you doing? Pepper asked in Naruto's stead. Checking for any other puncture wounds, open up and say ah, Tony instructed. Jarvis, do a scan for any leftover fibers on the kid's tongue. Tony. Pepper scolded. The billionaire looked at his girlfriend with confusion on his face, while his recently adopted son was scanned by his artificial butler. What? Tony replied innocently, like he wasn't doing anything wrong. Why are you searching Naruto for fibers? The woman asked. According to that file his name is Nick Stark now, replied Tony, making both other human occupants in the room blink in confusion, before looking up Jarvis. Small cotton fibers were found on either side of Naruto's mouth, Jarvis replied. If it's any consolation, Agent Romanoff did inform me that she would be taking a saliva sample. Not much you can do to stop her, Tony admitted before looking at Naruto. So, how's your first day as a Stark so far? Naruto was speechless, making Tony grin. Yeah, it's pretty much like that every day. You can't make me. Cried out Naruto as he held tight onto the concrete wall, while Dummy tugged on his leg. Tony was laughing in his chair at the sight, while Pepper just stared at the scene in disbelief. The red-deeded woman rubbed her forehead in a pointless effort to stave off the headache that was quickly coming her way. Naruto, you have to go to school and get an education, Pepper tiredly argued. She then gave a pointed look to her boyfriend. Stop laughing and give me a hand with this. Hess your son. That's what makes it so funny, though. Chuckled out the Avenger with a smile on his face. He then grabbed his glass of scotch, taking a sip before grinning at the woman. Besides, Hess a kid from another dimension with a background equivalent to that of a man once frozen in time. What else is he going to do? Become a physicist? A CEO? Maybe he could be a writer, I don't care, but he has to attend school if he wants to fit in with our society. Pepper said with a frown on her face. Naruto perked up when she spoke, and he let go of the wall. Naruto grunted as he fell to the ground, smacking his chin hard on ground and alerting his adoptive parents. To his situation, Tony choked briefly on his drink before letting out a few laughs as the blonde let out a few curses in Japanese. Nice landing, kid. Chuckled out Tony before snapping his fingers at the robot. Hey. Let go of his ankle, do I need to put you in the corner again? Dummy complied and released a saddened whir as it did so, rubbing his jaw while getting to his feet. Naruto looked at Pepper with wide eyes. They teach how to be a writer? He asked, bewildered. The woman nodded slowly. Naruto released a grin and continued, I could be a writer if I went to school. If you wanted to, do you want to? Pepper asked. Tony leaned forward, having enough experience before he became Iron Man at spotting when an emotional story was going to surface so that he could leave, then add in the fact that not much had been revealed by the blonde concerning his past life, which was understandable considering he was in a different dimension with possibly no way home. Why add to the hurt by remembering what may be unattainable? Yeah, Naruto said as he smiled softly, his eyes becoming wistful and slightly wet with tears. One of my old teachers, he was a writer, a pervert, too. He said he wrote to cope with all the things that happened to him, to escape reality. Heh, old perv said it was the only thing aside from women that kept him sane. Aside from women? Tony repeated in disbelief. Pepper sent him a sharp glare that he understood. He was treading on thin ice if his thoughts continued in the direction it was going. Wisely enough, he shut his trap and took another sip of scotch. Looking back at the blonde, Pepper gave him a soft smile. You want to follow in his footsteps? If you remember what his books are about, maybe we could work together and publish them here. Naruto's face turned from wistful to embarrassed in a millisecond, confusing Pepper, and for a second Tony, before the inventor figured it out and once again burst into laughter. It wasn't all that hard, seeing as the blonde mentioned he liked girls and was a pervert, add in writing, and Tony could make a few guesses as to what the books were about. Naruto looked to the ground, avoiding eye contact with the confused Pepper while she kept looking from him to Tony, in hopes that either would clarify what was so funny, neither of them would speak, and Pepper would eventually drop the subject. Now. Midtown High School. Mr. Stark. Naruto's head snapped up as the science teacher called him by his legal name. Boy, was that first month of answering to it hard. Thankfully, it was now behind him to the point that he recognized Tony's surname for his own, and he even answered to the name Fury gave him. Such as now. Yes, Mr. Warren. Naruto asked the teacher, trying to play off the fact he was asleep. In his own defense, Tony's constant tinkering with God, what model was he working on now? The Mark 15. 20. Whatever model he was working on, he did it late at night, and unfortunately for Naruto, it was keeping him up. A 30-something-year-old man with green eyes and dark hair gave the blonde a tired gaze before sighing out, "Please stay awake, Mr. Stark, I'd hate to have to repeat my lecture to you in detention, again." Sorry Mr. Warren, Naruto apologized with a tired grin. As long as it doesn't happen again, insisted the science teacher before he continued with his lecture in chemical compounds and how not to blow oneself up. Naruto groaned and audibly dropped his head back onto the desk. Pepper never mentioned other classes when she told him how school would help him accomplish his goal. Thankfully, lunch strolled around the corner and Naruto was more than ready for a break from his morning classes. Walking through the lunchroom, he could feel more than see the eyes on him. It felt like day one all over again, and it had been like this for a while. Now, thankfully after the first month the media stopped hounding him for answers. But students would still try to smile their way into his, or rather Tony's, wallet. Unbeknownst to the blonde, most of the gazes were those of longing from the opposite sex, with his constant choice to wear t-shirts and jeans that hugged his body, and his charming looks, not that he ever noticed without Pepper bringing it up. Naruto was officially one of the top most desirable guys in Midtown High. His background as being Iron Man's adopted son helped just a little bit with that. "Hey Nick," a lanky teen with short brown hair said as Naruto stood behind him in the lunch line. "Sup Peter?" Naruto asked with a grin. Peter Parker was one of the first to welcome Naruto to Midtown High and since then has been deemed Naruto's best friend, much to the confusion of the rest of the school. Puny Pete and the Stark were not expected to be friends, and yet they were. A few weeks ago, just as society started to recover from the devastating attack on New York, a robber fleeing the scene of his recent crime killed Peter's uncle. Peter became a recluse and more emo-like, much to Naruto's dismay. Seriously, why were all his best friends filled with angst? But Naruto stood at his side, respecting the grief the teen was feeling by not trying to soothe it over. It was during this time Naruto wished he had more control over his powers. Maybe he could find the one that did this to his friend. "Not much, got invited to the Stacy house for dinner," Peter said as the lunch lady plopped a bunch of mashed potatoes on his tray. Blanching, Peter then mumbled, "I think these are still raw." "It won't kill ya," Naruto whispered with a smirk, "but if it does, can I ask Gwen out on a date?" "Ha ha, you're a real comedian, Nick," Peter mumbled with a scowl before turning around and walking towards a table. "You got any advice for me?" "On what? Lunch or dinner?" Naruto asked as he followed the teen with smile still on his face. Peter gave his friend a look before sitting at an empty table. Naruto sat on the opposite side of him and picked up the 4-inch ham sub, taking a bite before waving the food at his friend. "Yeah no, you worry too much, Pete," Naruto said around his food. He swallowed the bite and continued, "Gwen obviously sees something she likes in you, God only knows what it is, but she likes you, just be the nerdy, well-mannered teen you are, and I'm sure her family will like you too, except for Captain Stacy, but he's a cop so it's to be expected." "What's he like?" Peter asked curiously as he took a bite from his own sandwich. Naruto hummed before smirking as he caught Gwen's eyes lingering on Peter from a table away. "Well, he's a cop, just a cop, head honcho and all that, he was one of the first on scene during the Chitauri invasion, you know, ask him about that." "If you were giving me bad advice, I'm going to hurt you, somehow," Peter added. Naruto laughed boisterously. Even here he had been known not to be messed with. He had to display some of his self-defense abilities against two would-be bullies. "Me? Give bad advice? Come on Peter, you've known me for 2 months," the blonde said with a grin. "Who backed you when Flash messed with Missy and Jesse?" "Alright, fair point," Peter relented, "but seriously, anything else you can give me? I really like Gwen and I don't want to mess this up." "Wow, just a few weeks of kind looks or words and you become a little puppy, huh?" joked Naruto, getting a small smile from his friend. Naruto's grin fell slightly and he leaned in. "Don't bring up that new guy, Spider-Man, the Avengers are one thing, but Spider-Man? Hess vigilante, cops don't like it when other people do their jobs." That's just trying to help, maybe he feels comfortable too because of the Avengers, Peter said defensively. Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly and his tone turned serious. Trust me on this, Peter, the blonde continued, cops don't like him, Hess making them look bad, I like the guy, really I think Hess doing a great job, but Hess making the wrong choices. What do you mean? The brown-haired teen asked with furrowed brows. Okay, so Hess doing all these fancy tricks, swinging from webs and crawling up walls, right? Naruto asked, and upon getting a nod, he continues, well, Hess also bringing crooks in, only problem is, these crooks all look the same, Hess got a target, but hasn't found it yet, obviously he wants justice, since Hess not killing the crooks, but he has no clue who Hess looking for. And that's bad. Hess still cleaning up the streets, Peter said. They had finished eating and were now walking to their lockers to get ready for the next class, which they shared, calculus. Hey, Naruto knows his math, had to pay his own taxes when he was 12, of course he knows that, doesn't mean he likes it. True, but what if next time he brings someone in, and that poor bastard just has the misfortune of looking like these other people? Naruto asked, that's going to get the cops in trouble with the city, and that is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, witch hunts, government agencies getting involved, all the big things conspiracy theorists love. So are you saying he should just let this one guy go? Even if the crime was murder? Peter asked, his fist clenching. If Spider-Man is so intent on catching the guy, he'll lock up anyone that resembles him, maybe Spider-Man needs to rethink his life, Naruto idly commented. He frowned immediately after saying that, which would be a shame, New York needs a hero, especially with the Avengers all doing their own thing. Don't we have your dad? Peter asked. Naruto shook his head. Though he's not meant to stop street crime, the blonde answered, he could level a small town if he tried to. No, the Avengers are meant to stop the big guns, what we need is someone who can take care of the streets. And Spider-Man is that someone. Not if he keeps hunting for this one guy that rubbed him the wrong way. Not if he keeps hunting for what guy? Gwen Stacy, the beautiful blonde girl asked as the two boys sat down at their desks, Peter seated next to her and Naruto behind his friend. Nothing, Gwen, just some guy talk, Naruto said before reaching forward and nudging his friend. Pete here was just worried about what to wear for his dinner date. Ah, shut up, Peter groaned. Gwen rolled her eyes, best let the two have their little secrets. Shall get them out of Peter later, anyway. A few days had passed and Naruto was having enough of sitting around and doing nothing. Spider-Man had redeemed himself in the eyes of some cops when he saved those people on the Williamsburg Bridge. He was sitting around doing nothing while others were suffering or in trouble. Maybe it was time he stepped out of hiding and took a shot at being the hero. Currently he was brainstorming in his math notebook while leaning against his locker. One of the names he took a liking to so far was Maelstrom, the translation of his real name to English. Maybe that's what he'll go by. Geez, who knew this naming thing was hard? Tony really lucked out, so did Captain America, and that Thor guy. Well, he was until the men's bathroom exploded and a giant green lizard came out. I thought those crocodile rumors were just rumors. Naruto said with wide eyes. The creature took a step towards the full hallway, students screamed and began fleeing in a manner that would make the wildebeests of Africa jealous. The human stampede caused Naruto to flatten against the lockers. He looked around for Peter and found him, heading straight towards the monster. To his ever-increasing surprise, Peter managed to slide under the first swipe thrown his way and did some impressive acrobatics that cost him his backpack before the monster slammed him into the lockers and then threw him through a wall. Yeah, no, this stops now, Naruto said before taking a deep breath and tapping into his latent power. Naruto clenched his jaw as the power cosmic surged through his body and he started to glow. The light attracted the beast's attention and the lizard watched as Naruto's eyes shone with golden light and the hidden whiskers via makeup were revealed. And who are you supposed to be? The lizard hissed out, glowing man. I haven't got a name yet, but you heard my friend, Naruto shot back, his voice echoing slightly, narrowing his eyes. The glowing teen continued, and I don't take kindly to that. Such a same, lizard replied before he was struck with a shoe from the room he stood outside. 2 rounds of webs followed after it, covering the wicked smile on his face. Listen to me Connors, you gotta fight it, Spider-Man said as he leapt at the creature, only to be tossed at the glowing teen. Naruto caught him with ease and dropped him to his side. The masked teen looked up to see what caught him and behind his mask, Peter Parker's jaw dropped. And Nick? Spider-Man asked in shock. Naruto looked towards him and grinned. Hey Pete, he greeted, guess we've both got some explaining to do, huh? You're telling me, Spider-Man muttered before looking at the lizard as he tore the webbing off his face. Oh. Talk later, fight now. Naruto confirmed as he ran towards the monster, ducking a blind slash and punching the creature in the gut. The lizard skidded back and cracked the wall he hit. Spider-Man followed up on the attack and used his webs to swing into a mule kick to lizard's gut, pushing the once human being through to a small classroom. Naruto hung back. Not able to get a clear shot at the enemy while Spider-Man was fighting him. His opening came when Spider-Man went soaring past him, the lizard leaping after its prey. Naruto interjected with a firm right cross that put the creature down. He charged up a blast and took aim at its head while he could, only for it to be rejected by his friend. "Don't kill him," Spider-Man insisted after latching a web onto Naruto's wrist and pulling it away from Lizard's head. This allowed for the lizard to smack the glowing blue teen away with his tail. Naruto stumbled back a few paces before his legs were struck by the damned fifth appendage, making him fall to his back. The reptile then pounced atop the teen and wrapped his hands around Naruto's neck, squeezing with the intent to kill. You're that Stark boy," the lizard hissed out as he recognized the teen's face. Despite the glowing, he sniffed and hissed once more. "What are you? You're not human, you don't smell it." Yo mama's toy," Naruto retorted while prying the creature's hands off his neck. "Pete. Any day now. Dr. Connors, let him go," Spider-Man cried out as he came back into the fight and jumped on the lizard's back, webbing the head of the reptile and then using small web lines to pull him back. The lizard roared in indignation and anger. Loosening his grip, Naruto slipped his feet into the reptile's stomach before pushing, sending both the lizard and Spider-Man flying. The lizard managed to land on his feet, whereas Spider-Man rolled further down the hallway. Naruto rolled onto his hands and feet, reaching for his throat as he took in air. He looked up and glared at the lizard, who was currently making a fool out of Spider-Man. "Doesn't look like he wants to talk it out," Naruto mentioned as he jumped at the lizard and put him in a Nelson hold. Grunting, he then asked, "Why aren't I killing him again? That's blinded you've by the chemicals that changed him." Spider-Man replied as the lizard's tail slammed him from various surfaces. The lizard roared once more and spun around, flinging both Spider-Man and his tail down an overhang corridor. The reptilian mutant then reached up and grabbed Naruto by the back of his head, flinging him over his shoulder into the same hallway. Dazed, both teens took their sweet time getting back to their feet. Spider-Man got up first, dodging the first swipe heading his way and getting the other claw wrapped around his head as a reward. The lizard stomped down on Naruto's back as he tried to push himself to his feet. The back of Spider-Man's head was slammed into the glass window, nearly shattering it. "You're both getting on my nerves," snarled the lizard as he increased his pressure on Naruto's back and his grip on Spider-Man's head. He opened his mouth to speak once more when a trophy to the head interrupted him. Looking at his new assailant, he was surprised to see yet another familiar face. "Gwendolyn, how nice to see you again," the lizard greeted his once internate as he dropped Spider-Man and took a step towards the human girl, releasing Naruto from his foot in the process. "Stay away from her," Spider-Man said, getting to his feet before throwing a web at the lizard's arm. As he tried to swipe at the police captain's daughter, he pulled Lizard back to face the duo and then threw a wider web. He started to wrap the giant bipedal reptile up like his namesake would a fly, giving him enough time to then turn to Gwen. Take the trophy out of her hands and threw it out the window to his left. He then pulled his girlfriend close and whispered, "I'm going to throw you out the window now, okay?" "What?" Gwen repeated in confusion before Spider-Man made good on what he said. A web shot out and latched onto Gwen, allowing her to swing under the walkway before dropping a foot to the ground. When the web line snapped, she landed on her back without any injuries. The sounds of sirens could be heard as the lizard broke free from his confines. Naruto got to his feet behind the bipedal reptilian monster, while Spider-Man crouched in front of him and taunted, "Uh-oh, someone's been a bad lizard." "I'm surprised they didn't show up sooner," Naruto commented before leaping at the lizard's head, promptly being caught by the tail and flung at Spider-Man back into the hallway. They were duking it out in before the two teens rose to their feet relatively fast, just in time to be charged through a wall with a barrage of punches and kicks. Naruto kept the lizard's attention off of the lone old guy, placing some books on the counter while wearing headphones. He looked vaguely familiar, but since his full attention was occupied, Naruto cold-named the man. There was an instance where Spider-Man narrowly managed to save the man from being struck by a table, using said table to hit the lizard. After the old man left, Spider-Man was tossed into a bookshelf, landing face down, while several books rained down on him. Naruto focused his energy around his fist and punched the lizard in the stomach. He heard a very nasty squelch sound and gave a smirk, only to be backhanded through the next room. As he and Spider-Man got to their feet, Naruto groaned and his head lolled back. "Tony's not going to let me live this down," groaned the teen as he powered down to his basic appearance, scratches in his clothes, revealing his bruised but otherwise unscathed body. Another realization hit him and he groaned again, and Pepper's going to freak. Naruto put the ice pack one of the paramedics gave him on the back of his right shoulder and let out a sigh of relief. Damn, those dislocations hurt. Even after putting it back in the proper socket, Peter left to follow Letty found, but promised he would stop by Stark Tower later. Naruto limped his way out to get the cops' attention on him. Gwen walked up to the ambulance Naruto was sitting in and took a seat next to him. The blonde Stark chuckled, "I figured you'd be looking for Pete. What's up, Gwen?" I know who Peter really is, and I know what happened to Dr. Connors, the blonde girl said softly, before looking at the amused eyes of her boyfriend's best friend. Who are you, Nicholas Stark? Swing by Stark Tower sometime, I've got stories to tell. Naruto dryly chuckled before looking up as a shadow fell over him. Hello, Captain. Gwen followed his gaze and said with little surprise, Daddy. Give us a few minutes, honey, Captain, Stacy insisted, leaving no room for argument. Gwen looked to Naruto, and he nodded, visibly disapproving of the situation. Gwen left the two to go talk to a few of her girlfriends. Naruto watched his friend's girlfriend leave, if only for the moment, before he looked up at the police captain. What can I do for you, Captain Stacy? Naruto asked, looking up at the man with a smirk that was similar to his adoptive father's. I'd like you to tell me what happened in there, Mr. Stark, Captain, Stacy said with a no-nonsense tone of voice. Naruto blinked before he also grew serious. Well, I was studying in the library with Mr. Lee the librarian stacking books, and then this giant lizard breaks through the wall. Next thing I know, that spider guy is fighting him in the room and him hiding behind a desk. So Spider-Man was part of this? Do you think he caused the attack? Captain, Stacy asked with a frown. No sir, if you ask me, Hess as much a hero as my dad is, Naruto said honestly. He saved my life, I just happened to return the favor. Is that why you dislocated your shoulder? You helped a known criminal? Captain, Stacy inquired. Before Naruto could reply, some gasps were heard and the high school students started cheering. Looking at the ground, Naruto sighed as he heard a familiar sound of thrusters. Well, Captain, Stacy turned around and gained a look of sheer surprise. Iron Man banked under the overpass hallway before landing in his trademark manner. He stood up and waved to the cheering teens, as well as the members of the media itching for a good story. Iron Man then walked over to the two by the ambulance, looking in the eyes of his adopted son before his faceplate snapped up. I hope you're happy, kid, Tony said in mock disapproval. Pepper is having a heart attack, and I was in the middle of a very delicious lunch. Mr. Stark, I don't think you realize how serious the situation is, Captain, Stacy said. Tony turned to face him. Is anyone dead? No. Are there any aliens threatening to invade the Earth? No, as far as I'm concerned the situation is over, Tony answered with a smile. Any injuries and damage will be covered by Stark Industries. Naruto chuckled while Captain Stacy opened and closed his mouth before sighing. The policeman gave the two a nod before walking away to check on his daughter. Tony watched him go before looking back at the blonde smirking up at him. Tony crossed his arms and asked, so, what's going on? Some scientist mutated himself into a giant lizard. Peter is coming over later to give us the full details. Before you ask, it's because he seems to have some very interesting skills Hess been putting to use lately, explained Naruto quietly. Tony nodded before he looked around and spotted a brunette constantly glancing in the blonde teen's direction. Way to go, kid. She's a cutie, approved the armored hero. He furrowed his brow and rubbed his chin. Cold sworn I've seen her before. Oh well, it'll come to me. Tony? You still there? Naruto asked, snapping the Avenger's attention back to the teen. Yeah, sorry I zoned for a second there, Tony said with a chuckle, ready to go. Let's hit it, Naruto replied. The blonde dropped the ice pack he had on his shoulder and hopped down from his seat on the ambulance. Tony's faceplate fell back down with a clang and he stood next to his adopted son. A red metal hand gripped onto Naruto's shoulder, getting a wince from the teen in question. Watch the shoulder, Tony. Sorry, might want to clench up, kid, Iron Man warned before he shot up into the sky. Cheering teens and impressed cops followed their departure with low whistles and murmurs. The girl Tony spotted earlier slipped away from the crowd and dashed through the alleyways toward Central Park. Boy, was Tippy Toe not going to believe this. Pepper. I'm fine, would you please stop manhandling me? Naruto insisted the second he and Tony stepped into the tower. After stopping at a small shawarma place to get some food, Jarvis initiated several scans and picked up on some of the still healing bruises. Pepper had pulled him into a hug and began checking him for injuries. Tony smirked as he walked in, wearing some casual dress clothes that were hidden by his armor, and asked, wow, Pepper, maternal instincts kicking in or what? Shut up, Tony, Pepper shot back before hugging Naruto tightly. Oh god, Naruto, thank goodness you're safe. That was nothing, insisted the blonde as he hugged the woman back. You should seen the time I was fought Haku. Boo. Pepper repeated with a frown. Okay, kid, we've really got to talk about your life before you came here, the inventor sighed out, making Naruto look at him in confusion. Tony shook his head, never mind, when's your friend coming over and how does he know about the monster that attacked the school? Peter was there? Is he alright? Pepper asked after releasing Naruto from her hug. The blonde took a few steps towards his room and ripped his shirt off. The fabric on the inside of the shirt smoked and Naruto swore, tossing the ruined shirt aside. That's more than alright, I think, Naruto answered before stretching with a groan. Ah, Tony, I need some sort of costume. Spanglier, would you like some armor? Tony asked with a smile on his face. I could try to ring Thor up and get you some Shakespearean clothes. Naruto rolled his eyes. I just need something that won't give away who I am. This lizard guy and Spider-Man knew who I was even while powered up. Spider-Man? Tony and Pepper repeated in confusion. Sir, I'm picking up an intruder on the 81st floor, Jarvis interrupted. Tony arched a brow and looked at Naruto. The blonde was staring at the masked person trying to peer into the room through the tinted glass. Naruto sighed as he rubbed his head, and that would be Spider-Man, nice way to stay inconspicuous dude. Jarvis, open the window on his right, Tony instructed. The AI did so, and the window to the right of the visitor hissed before shifting down enough to open. The red and blue clad hero hesitantly crawled in before pulling his mask off. Peter Parker looked at the two shocked adults, and then to the groaning blonde. So, I take it you didn't tell your dad who I was? Peter asked sheepishly. Naruto pinched a bridge of his nose, answering with his silence. Tony blinked several times before going to his counter and pulling out a bottle of scotch. I am way too sober for this, he commented before pouring a glass. Pepper. Why yeah, it'll take. Her eyes rolled into her head and she began to fall. Naruto caught her before she hit the ground, picking her up and moving her to a chair. Tony chuckled. Well, that's going to be fun explaining, he said to no one in particular. Boys. Can I get you a drink? I can't, Peter started, only for Naruto to cut him off. Nah, we're good. You sure? Alright then, more for me, Tony shrugged before looking at the dressed up Peter and snickering as he took a drink. Man, Rogers would love you. Rogers? Peter repeated in confusion. Naruto chuckled. He means that Captain America guy, the blonde answered before going to get another shirt. Don't start explaining anything till I get back, it's freezing in here. I offered to enroll you in L.A., Tony called after him before walking over to the couch and taking a seat. He gestured to the other chair in the room. Take a load off. What's your name again? Peter Parker. Wow, you're really Tony Stark, Peter said with wide eyes. Tony nodded. Last time I checked, the Avenger replied with a grin before taking another drink. Sorry, it's just never sunk in until now that you're really Nick's dad, I mean, adopted, but still, Peter replied nervously. Tony replied, putting his glass down and leaning forward. Tell me, what made you want to pull the tights on? Seeing Naruto walk back into the room with a plain white shirt on, Peter started to explain himself. Well, I was looking for clues on what happened to my mom and dad. I live with my aunt and my aunt. Two aunts? That had to be an awkward childhood, Tony interjected with a grin. Naruto cleared his throat, getting the older man's attention. Peter's uncle was killed in a robbery a few weeks ago, he said. Tony immediately regretted his joke and looked at the uncomfortable teen dressed in a spider motif costume. Oh, sorry, Tony apologized. He was still trying to get used to the real act of socializing without being an ass. It's alright, I mean it's behind me, Peter said, though neither of the two other males bought it. Peter then continued, well, anyway, I met a biologist named Kurt Connors. Connors? One arm, glasses, kind of over-devoted to his work. Tony interjected curiously. Peter looked at Naruto and back at Tony, who elaborated. He applied for a job at Stark Industries before when it was a weapons developing company. Yeah, well, he works at Oscorp now, Peter continued. He was working on a way to incorporate the regenerative probabilities of reptile DNA into humans. I solved an equation that helped develop a serum for it to be possible. I know you want to get involved now, but it's my fault Connors turned into this thing, so I have to stop him. You want to clean up your own mess, I get it, Tony interrupted once more before throwing a thumb at Naruto. He ain't gonna let you go after this guy alone, but him staying out of it. Nick, no I can't let you get Peter started, standing to persuade his friend to stay out of it. Save it, Pete, you couldn't stop me if you tried, Naruto said with a grin before triggering his powers. The cotton shirt he was wearing burned away instantly, and Naruto groaned, God damn it. Again. I keep telling you to stop practicing in cotton, Tony scolded. The only reason that other shirt lasted so long was because of the fancy doodles you put on it. Burns, Tony, I need to ask Drive, strange for stronger ones, Naruto trailed off, taking note of the growing confusion on Peter's face. Right, this is going to be a long story, should you call your aunt? Right. Crap, I dropped my phone in the sewers. Yeah, Mr. Stark. Tony, please, Mr. Stark was the old man, interrupted the billionaire with a smirk. Okay, Tony, can I use your phone? Peter asked. Tony nodded before holding a finger up. After you tell me how you got the idea of being called Spider-Man in your head, Tony said. Naruto looked to his friend with a curious gaze, and Peter scratched the side of his head. Would you believe me if I said I got my powers from a spider? Asked a teen. The other two conscious people in the room gave him deadpan stares, and he sighed, didn't think so. After a rather lengthy explanation of his origin, Naruto stared at his friend with a patient look on his face. Peter was shell-shocked and unresponsive, trying to take in all the information he was given. Tony was explaining Peter's life as a hero to a now conscious Pepper when Naruto's cell phone rang. Arching a brow, Naruto looked at the ID and grinned as he answered, "Hey Gwen, what's going on?" "Naruto. Is Peter with you?" Gwen's voice sounded urgent over the phone. Naruto furrowed his brows. "Yeah, what's up?" "My dad just called me and told me the lizard was seen rampaging downtown." Gwen sounded urgent. "He's coming this way." "This way? Where are you?" Naruto asked in confusion. Peter's eyes widened and he snatched the phone from Naruto, electing a hey. "Gwen. Gwen, did you get the antidote?" Peter asked. Naruto snatched the phone back and put it on speaker. "Peter. Oh thank God, yeah, I've got 6 minutes before it's done," the girl answered. Peter and Naruto exchanged a look before the web-slinging hero ran to the balcony and pulled his mask on. He leapt to the sky and threw a web line, swinging off towards Oscar. Internally he berated himself for getting distracted by his own curiosity. "Peter." Gwen called for her boyfriend. Naruto took the phone off speaker and put it to his ear. "He's on his way, just get out of there." Jarvis turned the news on. Tony announced, catching sight of an explosion through the window. "Which station, sir?" the AI inquired. "All of them." Tony repeated. The news came on, and the two Stark men in pepper pots viewed the carnage being caused by the lizard. Naruto turned to the balcony and started running out to it, his power flickering on. "Naruto." Pepper cried out in concern. Tony grabbed her shoulder, keeping her from running after the teen as he shot from the landing pad. Tony was impressed that Naruto had managed to get flying down just from watching him, but what he didn't know was that Naruto was using his time being unable to sleep for practice. "Should I prepare the markate, sir?" Jarvis asked. Tony looked back at the television. "No, the kid's got this one," Tony answered as the news helicopter got a visual of Spider-Man swinging on his webs towards the Oscar building. Another news channel got visual of Naruto taking off from Stark Tower and flew after him, the headline reading, "A new Iron Man." "Tony, you can't seriously be thinking about letting him go fight that thing?" Pepper asked with worry in her voice. Tony was one thing, he was a grown man, but Naruto. He was a kid that had a chance at normalcy. If fear's one thing that made Pepper nauseous, was the child soldier reports Tony would bring up during the war in the Middle East. He might not have enough control over all of his power, but he can limit himself, Tony responded softly before a smile tugged at his lips. Glancing at his girlfriend, he continued, "This is something he needs to do, Pepper, trust me on this." Pepper just bit her lip in worry and went to her purse, grabbing the phone from within and making a quick call. "Hello Nat. Yeah, it's Pepper. Listen, I need to talk to someone sane or I'm going to lose it." Naruto saw and heard Peter get shot in the leg. He saw the cops surrounding his friend as he flew, but before he could dive down to stop anything from happening, a bullet grazed his back. Naruto stopped midair and glared at the sniper that hit him. He raised a hand, knowing the scope on the gun could see him, and caught the next shot heading towards him, dropping the caliber from his hand. The glowing teen then shook his index finger at the sniper. "That wasn't nice," he called out before shooting down to grab Peter as he reclaimed his mask. "Captain." Stacy stared in surprise before noticing one of his men taking a shot, to his and the shooter's surprise, the shot hardly made Naruto flinch as it bounced off him. "You mind? I can handle myself," Spider-Man said as he struggled in Naruto's grip. "Since when can you fly, anyway?" "Recently, it's the landing I need to work on," Naruto joked before looking at some cranes shifting. "Guess the people want their hero to do this on his own. Here's your stop, meet you at the top." "What?" Naruto oh. Spider-Man cried out as Naruto dropped him a couple of feet above a building just a few blocks from the first crane. Naruto grinned and looked at the Oscar tower, aiming for where a spotlight was following something up the base. "I'm going to buy you some time, Pete," Naruto said to no one in particular as he shot ahead, narrowing his eyes as his speed picked up. Naruto put his arms ahead of him just as the lizard looked behind him. The lizard roared in indignation as Naruto carried him for a ride through several walls before they separated in a large lab on one of the lower floors. Naruto groaned and got to his feet. Relatively at the same time as his current foe. "Man, I've seen some ugly people, but you sure take the cake," Naruto commented, getting a roar for his insult. "Your breath doesn't help with the image. Why do you insist on interfering? I'm going to save everyone." The lizard snarled as he rushed at Naruto. Naruto ducked under a swipe and threw a jab into the reptilian mutated man's side, getting backhanded for his efforts. He followed through with the momentum and dropped to the ball of his foot, snapping the other foot out and sliding it behind the lizard's own arched feet. The lizard fell to his back with a growl, but quickly flipped to his stomach and wrapped his tail around Naruto's leg. Naruto was whipped into a glass tank filled with a strange liquid. He pushed himself back to his feet and ran at the now fleeing lizard, leaping onto the changed man and driving the reptilian face into the ground. He lifted the former biologist's head back up and drove it into the ground once more. repeating the action several times before the lizard recovered from the initial blow and tossed him aside. Very well then. I'll just have to finish you first. Snarled the lizard as he got to his feet and grabbed the power cosmic user by his ankle. Naruto was whipped up into the flimsy ceiling before being slammed down face first into the floor. He groaned before the lizard then threw him towards the hole they had made together. Naruto flipped himself in the air before flying back at the lizard. He wasn't prepared to be hit by a computer desk like one would a ball with a bat. Naruto soared back towards his origin point and was slowed only by the pillar that dented on his impact. The reptilian terrorist stalked over to him and slammed the ball of his foot into the teen's already damaged back, earning a sadistically satisfying crack. Now stay down and accept the future. Snarled the lizard before he ran towards the exit and resumed his climb. Naruto groaned and turned his head to the side, his eyes shut and his power fading from activity. "God damn it," murmured the blonde with a groan as he rolled onto his back. "Did anyone get the number on that truck?" "I am Iron Man," Ozzy Osbourne said from Naruto's hip. Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled his phone out, mildly surprised it survived the attack before he answered the call. "Hey Tony, how's it going?" Naruto asked as he slowly sat up, reaching behind him and holding his back, that was going to bruise later. "Kid, that lizard thing just burst into an R&D floor where Jarvis as your friend Gwen made the call from," Tony said. Naruto sighed and got to his feet, popping his dislocated spine back into position with a long groan. "Oh man, we gotta up my training after this," the blonde mumbled into the phone, getting a laugh from his legal guardian. "Thanks Tony, for the help and staying out of it." "Hey, just say the word and I'm on my way, till then, kick his ass for me," Tony said back before the phone hung up. Naruto let out an amused snort before tossing the phone lightly in the air and catching it. He pocketed the device before his power flickered on. Backing up to get a good start, Naruto ran towards the hole before jumping out of it and shooting up the side of the building. He stopped at the next hole and dropped inside, looking around for the girl his friend loved. He was caught off guard by the roaring strike of the lizard and sent flying into another room, landing next to a terrified Gwen, grunting. Naruto then said, "Hey Gwen, what's that?" "The key to my success." The lizard snarled as he grabbed Naruto with his tail, diverting Gwen's attention. She used a bottle and a lighter to spray some fire in the direction, only managing to get Naruto's arm, though it didn't do much damage. The lizard's tail flung Naruto into the other side of the room and he snatched the machine Gwen was protecting. Naruto growled in annoyance as he got back to his feet once again. "That's it, next time he does that I'm keeping that damn tail," the glowing hero announced as he pushed the rubble he made for himself off. Gwen rushed over and started pulling some of the rubble away and helped him up. She gasped as he stood up, looking at his face. "Nick, is that really you?" she asked quietly. Naruto nodded. "Yeah, it's me," he replied before wrapping an arm around her. "Come on, let's get you out of here." "No, not yet, the antidote isn't done yet," Gwen said as she broke out of his grip and went back to the processing chamber as it announced its completion. She took the container that the machine produced and held it in her hands. "Peter, you're a genius. Now all I have to do is get it to him," Naruto said as he took the vial from her and then wrapped an arm around her once more. Before she could protest he slipped his other arm under her legs and went to the hole the lizard created. He jumped out and began his descent, rapidly. "Hang on," he called over the rushing wind and Gwen screaming before he flared his power through his feet. The sudden plume of energy acted as a countering speed, slowing their descent so that when he landed feet first, his legs didn't shatter on impact. He did fall back to his ass, though. Several of New York's finest were immediately surrounding them, barrels pointing at his and Gwen's heads. Wait, hold your fire. Captain, Stacy said as he broke through the circle of SWAT officers and looking down at them. "Gwen. Daddy." The girl cried back, practically leaping from her spot on Naruto's lap into her father's arms. He pulled her into a hug, which she returned with vigor. The NYPD put their aim back on Naruto. As he slowly got to his feet, he held his hands up, including the small tube. "Drop the agent, now," one of the officers ordered. Naruto calmly said, "I can't, I need it." "I said put it down," ordered the officer. "Stand down." "Captain," Stacy cried out, putting Gwen behind him and looking at the glowing teen with suspicion. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "Who are you?" "I'm a friend of Tony Stark's," Naruto answered in a half-truth. "I need to get to the top of the building and stop the lizard." "Captain," Stacy and Naruto held their gaze into the other's eyes, glowing golden staring into hardened blue before Stacy relaxed and nodded. He released Gwen and went to his car, grabbing a shotgun before coming back to stand in front of Naruto. He held the shotgun in both hands before announcing, "Not without me, you're not." "Captain. Daddy, no." Gwen pleaded while the NYPD SWAT looked at their superior in surprise. "Last time I stood idly by while a bunch of aliens threatened my city, Captain," Stacy said with a determined gleam in his eye. "I'm not letting it happen again. You're either taking me with you or I'm placing you under arrest for obstructing the law." "It would never stick," Naruto said with a frown. "I might be an alien, myself." Okay, new bargain, the police captain said before cocking his shotgun and aiming at Naruto's chest. You take me with you or I put a round of bullets in your chest. Naruto stared him in the eyes and asked, you're willing to shoot me, just to fight a monster? I'm going to shoot you to save my city, corrected Captain Stacy. Gwen grabbed his arm and tried to pull him away. Daddy please, he can handle it with Spider-Man, don't do this, please. She pleaded before he shook her off. Put her in a car and get her out of here. Captain Stacy ordered two of his men, who complied and dragged the pleading girl away from her father. The police captain put the barrel of the shotgun right at the glowing teenager's nose, his eyes narrowed, while Naruto's own heartbeat began to race. Take me with you or see if you survive a gunshot point blank, your choice, repeated the man. I can't believe you put a shotgun to my face. Naruto said as he and Captain Stacy flew towards the top of the Oscript Tower. I still can't believe you're Nicholas Stark, the police captain shouted over the wind. How'd you get so good at flying without us noticing? I learned from Tony. Naruto answered before they came up on the lizard strangling an unmasked Spider-Man. Naruto looked worriedly at Captain Stacy. The man looked back and grinned. Boy, you kids are having more fun than I ever did in high school, huh? He asked. Naruto chuckled as they landed just behind the lizard. The reptilian bioterrorist raised a claw and cried out in victory, you're always alone. That's not alone now. Captain Stacy called out after firing a shotgun round and blowing the nitrogen hose free. Peter grabbed the hose and shoved it in the lizard's face, then aiming it at the tail, shattering it and freeing himself. He rolled to Naruto and Captain Stacy's side, giving the two free rein to fire bullets and the concussive force of power cosmic at the partially frozen lizard. Naruto reached into his pocket and handed Peter the antidote, gift from your girlfriend. Thanks. Peter said before running towards the tower where the lizard set up shop. Captain Stacy looked at Naruto after firing another shot at the lizard. Girlfriend? He asked. Naruto rolled his glowing eyes. You can threaten him later, the teen said before pressing his attack and shooting the tanks of nitrogen, exploding them when the lizard fell in from the force of Captain Stacy's shot. Naruto and Captain Stacy stood on the edge, continuing to fire shots into the hole. When Captain Stacy ran out of ammo they stopped and peered into the pool. Think Hess dead? I mean, he should be dead, right? Naruto asked the police captain. His answer came in the form of a broken tank of nitrogen, sending him back to the roof a good few feet away. Captain Stacy turned and shot the partially frozen hand of the lizard as he started to climb out of the pool of nitrogen. Captain Stacy cocked his shotgun once again aiming at the monster's head. The lizard moved faster and impaled him with his other claw. Human nuisance. Snarled the bioterrorist before tossing the man away and racing for the spider-themed hero. Naruto pushed the tank of nitrogen off of him and raced to Captain Stacy's side. He put his hand over the wound, making the police captain cry out in pain. Naruto's jaw clenched and his emissive eyes narrowed. Flashes of a dead teenager that used ice went through his head. I'm not going to lose him, thought the cosmic-powered teen. He slipped his arms under Captain Stacy's legs and back, standing with the man's in his hold. He ran towards the edge and forced more power cosmic through his feet, shooting up into the sky at the same time as a bright blue canister. He flew towards the ground with his friend's girlfriend's father in his arms. He landed the same way as he did with Gwen, though this time he had a few more cracks upon impact and he had managed to stay upright. He rushed over to the nearest paramedic and said, "Stop gawking at the sky and save this man. Has been impaled through the gut and is losing blood." "Oh, shit, put him in here," the paramedic replied before he and his partner started to dive into medical jargon that flew over Naruto's head. He heard several screams from people who hadn't been evacuated yet and looked up to see the tower Peter was climbing start to fall towards the ground. "Everyone get back," a policeman shouted as the debris fell towards the ground. Naruto turned around and started running before leaping into the air and flying at the tower. He forced more power cosmic to flood his muscles, and his vision blurred. The power started to overcome him, but he regained control long enough to show why he could go toe-to-toe with the Incredible Hulk if he so chose to. As the people turned away and covered their mouths to avoid having their lungs filled with dust and debris much like the terrorist attack a decade ago, they heard a rather loud thud, followed by several similar ones before it came to a halt. The people turned to see if it was over when they were overtaken by awe. Tony and Pepper were glued to the closest news channel, and when the dust cleared they saw something that made their jaws drop. "Oh my god," Tony said as a smile crawled across his face. "Way to go, kid." "Yes." He and Pepper laughed in happiness as they stared at the visual the nearest and lowest news crew's camera gave them, standing in a crouch with a large tower resting on his shoulders. Naruto stood with his hands bracing the collapsed tower. He then dropped the large heavy metal behind him. He immediately powered down and fell to his hands and knees. Before anyone could get close enough to confirm an ID, he regained enough control over his discomfort to power back on and start walking away before taking off once more. He lost power just 2 buildings away, leaving a large divot in the roof of the building he landed on, groaning and spitting the material that kicked up into his mouth back out into the air. Naruto rolled onto his back, he reached into his pocket and dialed Tony's number. In Stark Tower, the room began to play AC/DC's Thunderstruck, prompting Tony to grab his phone and answer, "Kid. Kid, that was amazing. How'd you do that? Could you do it again?" "Tony, I'll take that offer for you to come help now," Naruto weakly chuckled before he coughed again. Tony laughed, "Alright, just hang tight, I'm on my way." "Thanks, Tony," the gratefulness in his tone was obvious by how tired it sounded. "Not a problem, kid," replied the Avenger with a grin on his face. What could he say? He was proud of the kid. That cloud of debris cold suffocated the surrounding members of the NYPD and any other civilian stragglers, not to mention bring down the surrounding helicopters under 300 feet, and according to the news channels, there were a good 5 helicopters out there. The days that followed were raining and dreary, some policemen didn't survive the toxin that was ingested into their system, and there was a mass funeral that the two Starks attended. He watched as a wheelchair-bound Captain Stacy give a speech honoring the fallen. Naruto and Tony both had grim faces, neither of them in the mood for jokes. After the service and avoiding the media, Naruto had ditched the tie and the jacket he wore as soon as he entered Stark Tower, rolling the sleeves of his blue silk shirt up, while Tony relaxed in his dress clothes, well more used to the attire. As they sat down on the couch and turned the television on, it was the next story after the coverage of the police service that got their attention. And with those who fell, 2 rows up, the news reporter said as images of a web-swinging Spider-Man and Naruto holding the steel tower up, "The people have spoken and it's official, the Avengers may belong to the world, but Spider-Man and the hero we here at Channel 7 dubbed the Beacon, belong to New York, with former biologist, now terrorist drive." Curtis Connors locked up thanks to the 2 heroes stopping his rampage. The questions everyone wants answered now is that of the mysterious identities of these 2 heroes. "The Beacon?" Naruto repeated in disbelief while Tony chuckled, "That's so lame." "Hey, it's better than glowworm," Tony joked before patting the teen on the shoulder. "Ah, come on, you're a beacon of hope, it fits." "Well, what about Maelstrom? Or Cosmic Man?" Naruto asked, getting a laugh from his adoptive father. "What?" "Listen, kid, the heroes don't get to name themselves," Tony explained as he picked up his drink. "That's the media's job. Hell, the only one who thought up Thor was his dad. How the media got that much information he'll never know. Listen, it's not the name, it's the person who bears it, you get it?" "Yeah, I guess, but goddamn that's the dumbest name I've ever heard," swore Naruto with a pout. Tony chuckled and took another sip of his drink. "Oh, trust me, it could always be worse," mumbled the Avenger. The artificial butler broke the duo's bonding time as he spoke up. "Pardon me, sirs, but Captain Stacy, his daughter and Mr. Parker are at the front desk," Jarvis said. "Give them clearance to come up," Tony said, "and remind me to call Bruce after they leave." "Why, miss your Avenger buddy?" Naruto teased as he grabbed his own can of cola. "No, I need to make sure he'll be fine watching you while Pepper and I go back to L.A. for a bit," Tony casually answered, making Naruto choke on his drink. "You got me a babysitter?" the blonde asked with wide eyes. Tony smirked at him. "If you're gonna play the hero, I need someone responsible to watch you so fury doesn't come knocking," the older Stark shot back. The not private elevator dinged and opened to reveal the 3 guests wearing visitor badges. Tony and Naruto both stood up, the blonde hopping over the couch to shake George Stacy's hand, hug a happy Gwen back, and bro hug a slightly bruised Peter. "Ah, Captain Stacy, Mr. Parker, and, I'm sorry, Gwen was it?" Tony greeted with a handshake as he followed his adopted son to the guests. He then pointed at the badges on their clothes. "Take those off, I know you're safe, if you weren't, well, the kid could kick your ass 6 ways from Sunday." The group of 5 moved to the center of the room, with Gwen and Peter sitting on the couch and Captain Stacy rolling up next to them. Naruto plopped down next to his friend, and Tony took a seat in the chair next to him. Looking at Naruto with a smile, Captain Stacy said, "If it weren't for you, son, it'd be a dead man now. You have my thanks for saving my life, both you and Peter have my eternal gratitude for saving my city. That being said, I should have you both arrested for vigilantism." Hi, yeah, big time vigilante right here," Tony interjected. "I'd arrest you too if you weren't untouchable," Captain Stacy shot back before looking at the 2 boys. They however, aren't. "Dad," Gwen admonished, to which he waved her off. I know, I'm a cop, it's my job to uphold the law and ensure justice is delivered," the police captain continued, "but maybe us boys in blue could use a little hand every now and then." Officially, the NYPD are going to investigate any situations involving Spider-Man or the Beacon. "Oh come on," complained the blonde as he covered his eyes in shame. Tony laughed at the teen's embarrassment while the other 3 stared at him in surprise. Tony then looked at Peter. "So, how's the amazing Spider-Man holding up?" I'm in pain, lots and lots of pain," Peter admitted before glowering at Naruto. "How are you standing up like you didn't just get hit by 7 trucks?" I've got a healing factor from my powers. I think Connors broke my back twice last night and all I have to show for it is a bruise the size of my fist, Naruto said with a grin. Wanna trade? I'll take Spider-Man over Beacon any day. Thanks watch here.